education, all the way through. Believer, you go to hell. Believer, you go to hell. Believer, you go to hell.
I noticed that. I did notice that in the 70 pages that I read. So what I want to say to you, man, is take these two ideas, these mythological ideas.
Yeah.
The thing that I'm really interested in is value that can be drawn from stories, from ancient stories that might be representative of deeper truths that lie within our subconscious. That's what I mean. I'm no fan of religious dogma at all. I'm not going to stand here and try and defend it. No, that's a fruitless endeavor. But what I am aware of is that certain ideas that you can hold can really help you in life, and you are not able to demonstrate them as being true. I've experienced that myself, you know? It's quite different from a dogmatic approach saying everyone's going to hell if you don't follow what I believe. The thing that I'm wary of is maybe a strong insistence with atheism, because I don't actually know where you come from or what you think about so accurately, but for me, an anti-theist position, is that not hubristic in a sense?
Anti-theism means that I'm against religion.
Okay.
That I think the religion is a net negative against humanity. That what little good that it has done here or there in some isolated instance is overwhelmed by the evil that it has wrought throughout history everywhere it has ever been. That's why my country was originally set up to be a secular nation. The founding fathers wanted a wall of separation because they knew that every single time a church gets control over rule over law,
right,
automatic violation of human rights. Every time.
Yeah, right. Okay.
And what religion isn't inherently criminal?
I'm not sure I can answer that one, but what I would like to say again is something a bit poetic, but do you think that man can live on facts alone?
Yes.
I mean in the sense of being comfortable with existential crises.
Yes.
It seems to me that for many, of course, yes is the answer, but for a large number of people, maybe it's not. Because we're not all the same, you know what I mean? We're running on different preconceptions.
People tell me that their faith means more to them than anything. It sounds very much like to me like somebody who's defending their heroin addiction. Right? I see religion as being very much like a strong addiction, like heroin.
Okay.
And
it's hard to have a balanced discussion.
Religion is shown that poor people are far easier led into religion, and they have a lot of anxiety and they have a lot of uncertainty about the future, so it gives them confidence. Whereas
I wouldn't say it's only poor people, man.
I think statistically it's shown.
Well, okay, maybe so.
Statistically, the lower your level of education, the more likely you are to believe in it.
Okay, no, I can see that being the case, but I don't see it. I don't see that as a bad thing. Why is that intrinsically bad?
Why are lies bad? Is that your question?
Well,
implying that there is something missing. I'm just telling you that it's more around the poverty line that they are more vulnerable to believing in religion because it gives them confidence.
So,
whereas the richest people, they don't believe in religion.
Would you agree that I should not state as fact things that are not evidently true?
Yeah, in the general sense, yes. But another thing to say would be something that it might lead this convo down a different path, but we don't need to go there. What can we demonstrate to be true? If you know what I mean. From my understanding, it's awareness. It's your own understanding that something is aware, that something is happening. It's the only thing that we can know to be the case. Everything else, who knows, man?
I often say that the truth is what the facts are, right? The facts are objectively verifiable. It's objectively verifiable data. So if I want you to show me the truth of it, then I want you to show me what we can show to be true about your belief. If you do the same to me, I will be able to demonstrate, okay, why do I hold this position? It's because of this evidence backs it up and shows that it's right.
Right. Okay.
And religion doesn't do that. It just repeats the assertion.
Okay, I understand. So the line that I'm trying to investigate these days is the value that can be gained from spiritual belief, which is a different idea from religion. And I really think there is value to be gained in that. And
how? How could there be?
Well,
okay, there is no spirit. There is no afterlife. We have physicists showing that there's no possibility of a spirit. Literally. There's literally no possibility.
Why not?
Because in order to say whether something is possible, we have to have a precedent or parallel or verified phenomenon indicating that such possibility exists. We do not have that for spirits or for anything supernatural.
But something to say about that is, from my reasonably limited knowledge, I studied biology by the way, but a little bit of knowledge of science, is that throughout the ages we've gone through tiers and iterations of worldviews that have become progressively more expansive. But previous to that expansion, people might have been saying similar things that you just said, that, well, that's entirely impossible, nobody around here could ever think something like that. All the evidence we have at the moment says it's impossible. And then maybe 20 years later, revolution in thought.
There's a difference between saying it's impossible and saying there's no possibility. The possibility is the thing you can demonstrate. This is the data that indicates that possibility exists. You can't show me the data that indicates that possibility exists, so there is no possibility.
You get my point though. Scientific knowledge advances, so it's possible that it might advance to a stage where it might show these things to be the case. I think it's not...
Show what things to be the case?
The things you said, things that we consider to be supernatural.
No, they've already gone beyond that and shown that it's not just that there's no possibility, there's no soul. There's not, that doesn't happen.
Interesting. One of the first things I remember a biology professor telling me in the first lecture I went to at university was, if a scientist ever tells you that something's a fact, it's not a good scientist.
So scientists don't believe in facts?
No, it's...
Objectively verifiable data, scientists don't accept?
That's obviously not what I'm saying. Okay. I'm saying that if somebody's saying that this can never be changed, they maybe have a narrow view on possibility. I think our universe is incredibly strange.
It's not just that there's no... It should be enough that there is no evidence for a soul. We should be done. Okay, we've got literally nothing to talk about. But we've gone beyond that. We have evidence of no soul. So not just a lack of evidence for a soul, we actually have evidence that there is no soul. So,
how would there be evidence of no soul?
Because you can test for everything that the soul should produce. Now, I'd have to refer you to Sean Carroll's lecture on that. He's repeated that lecture a number of times. If you contact me, I'll get you the link.
Sure, but how would we know the constituting substance of a soul to be able to measure it?
Well, if you're going to ask me about physics, you probably should talk to a physicist.
But you know what I mean? It seems to me that the soul is a spiritual idea, not a physical manifestation.
Yeah, but it's
Actually,
also...
you're quite wrong. We have not been able to establish whether a soul exists or not.
No, not only do we not have evidence of no soul, but they have now actually established evidence of no soul.
No, there was a most recent interview by the most leading neurologist.
Okay, that claim is coming from Sean Carroll. Take it up with Sean Carroll. He's the physicist who's making that claim.
But just one scientist doesn't, if one scientist...
How many scientists does it take?
How do you observe a soul? I mean,
That's my question.
Right, exactly.
So when you say a scientist is making a claim, surely they must have conducted an experiment. And as
more than that. He's got more than that.
I have a reference to a scientific interview.
He actually has rather a huge equation to prove it.
An equation?
Yeah.
To observe a soul. What's the tool that he uses?
What's
so it's
the
a theory
tool?
or it's an actual experiment to prove?
I don't want to go over his lecture because I don't...
So it's a theory?
No, it's not a theory. A theory is a hypothesis that's been effectively proven.
Because surely you must conduct an experiment.
Yeah, a theory is a body of knowledge or field of study of a hypothesis that has been effectively proven. So this is not a theory. This is not the highest level of confidence that science can achieve. It doesn't qualify as a theory. Got it?
Okay. And I'm telling you...
My most hated argument is when people say, well, it's just a theory. Yeah, atomic theory is just a fucking theory.
No, I understand your resistance to that, but I'm agreeing with him.
It does not exist, or
Right.
that you're implying there's actually an experiment.
It would be
to
enough.
establish facts.
Having no evidence of the soul... Wait. Having no evidence of a soul is enough to say that there is no soul. Having no possibility of a soul is extra. And now we have evidence that there is no soul.
Earlier, when it was religion, you went on the path of having faith. So you demanded actual evidence of facts.
Right. So we have a basis where you want to claim, as I have said to you earlier today, if you make a claim that anything exists, you've made the claim, the positive claim, you then have to put up the burden of proof. It's not up to me to prove that the thing does not exist.
I agree. But you've said that there's no possibility of it.
Right. So if you want to present that there is a possibility, then show me what that possibility is. What is the precedent or parallel or verified phenomenon indicating that possibility exists?
No, I can't.
Then there is no possibility.
Wow, very funny.
No, what they,
So what I mean is that this study is Sean Carroll, you said?
Yeah.
I'll look that up for sure. It just seems like something that
I don't want to make it as
interesting.
my claim. That's what he says.
Yeah, okay.
So he's claiming to have shown that this does not exist.
And you agree with him on that? With the
I
evidence he
said
put forward?
it's enough for me that there's no evidence of a soul,
Okay.
nor possibility of one.
Right,
why?
okay.
Why would you believe someone?
What?
Why would you believe someone that you don't actually understand the maths? Because
I
there's just one scientist.
don't.
For the same number of scientists that claim there is no
I
soul.
don't.
You don't.
I don't.
You don't
Why
believe-
would you believe what I don't believe?
Oh, so
I
you don't
don't believe.
Oh, so you don't believe him anyway?
What?
But you.
I said it is enough that there is no evidence of a soul. We're done. We literally have nothing to talk about. There's nowhere else we need to go. No evidence. No. The claim is false.
Because of one man's claim.
What one man's? Some men said there is a soul. Show me the evidence of the soul. You can't. You're done. You're wrong.
But why would you believe
An
the negative?
unsupported assertion.
But he's not
And
giving any
I'm not
evidence.
talking about him. I'm talking about the claim of a soul.
But surely, one way or another, you need to prove to either accept.
No, not one way or another. You make a positive claim that a thing exists. The burden is on you, solely on you. You're making the claim the thing exists. You have to produce the evidence. If you cannot,
That's
then
absolutely
you
fine.
are
I
wrong.
agree
The
with
thing
you.
does not
I
exist.
agree with you, but a few minutes ago
That's the
you
point.
referenced a scientist
Yes.
and you said you believe it doesn't exist because of X, Y, Z. There is an equation.
Yes.
That's where you went wrong. But we can move
That's not where I went
Yes, you
wrong.
did.
No.
Did he not say there is a scientist that has
There
an
is a
equation
scientist
that
who's,
proves that it
yes,
doesn't
who's
exist?
conducted a study, who's claimed that he's found evidence.
And you
that-
said you don't believe it exists.
I
because
don't
of that.
believe him. I don't need to believe him. It's enough that there is
Okay,
no
let's
evidence.
leave it there. Let's leave it
and
there.
there's no possibility. So, an unsupported assertion, a soul. Wait. You made it. Wait. Okay, let me finish this, please. This is important. This is integral to my position. An unsupported assertion has no more credence than a claim that has been proven wrong. So if you make the claim that God exists, a soul exists, Jesus talked to you, your dead ancestors live inside you, you had a past life as an Aztec, whatever you want to say, if you can't back it up, it's false.
I agree.
Thank you.
Okay, so after that, oh my ears. Right, this is not what I'm used to. I'm used to nice, calm discussions, which is an unusual thing in Speaker's Corner. But anyway, so
It is. I haven't been here many times, but it's been a madhouse every time.
I try to change the mode on that, man. But okay, so let's see. I want to present some ideas maybe, because here's an idea. I know we both agree that religions have done terrible things in the past, but
No, not in the past.
And in the
Always
pre-
and forever.
Okay, well, fine. But is that because religion is? I would be that religion is made by man.
Yeah.
Like I'm not following these religions, right? So it's an idea that man has brought forward. We're trying. I would say it's a method of trying to understand the world, right?
And that is
like,
a method of achieving political and financial power through the manipulation of the masses.
It can also be that, absolutely.
And,
Right.
and what religion isn't?
Right, okay, that's fine. So, on the large scale, yeah. So, what I would like to say is that if that arises spontaneously from man, from the human, this trying to rationalize the world, or maybe rationalize is the wrong word, but trying to understand the world in a certain way and creating mythological stories to maybe elucidate archetypes that we experience throughout our lives, for me, that is if that's something we do intrinsically, it doesn't seem to me it needs to be by necessity something bad.
Yeah, until you demand that they believe it.
Okay,
And
I agree with
that's what
that.
makes it religion immoral. They demand that you believe, or else.
Right.
A fate worse than death.
So, for example, if I found somebody here that was a religious person that lived their life in a religious way, but was entirely not comfortable with ever forcing upon anyone else, you would say their way of life is fine for them.
As long as they're not hurting anybody else, I don't care.
Okay.
But if they're promoting lies, and my big motivation is I normally take on creationists.
Right, yeah.
So I set aside in one category people who believe things that are not evidently true.
Mm-hmm.
But religion only makes two claims: things that are not evidently true and things that are evidently not true.
Right.
So there's no truth to any of it, but there are a handful of lies.
Well,
There's things that are not truth, and then there's things that are lies. So with creationism, there's things that are lies, and so there's things we can prove are not true. So
Okay,
we
that's
don't
fine.
have to have the faith base.
Yeah.
Because I don't like arguing like interpretations of scripture, because the same 5 people can read the same scripture 5 different ways, right? And it means something very different to them.
right, yeah.
So Anyway, and I've seen this demonstrated countless times. But I like to argue against the creationists because we have things we can actually demonstrate and prove to be true about evolution. And then we see where the belief system comes in, where they don't care what the truth is. They want to believe something else. And I've seen people literally grown people stick their fingers in their ears, go la 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 la, so that they don't hear.
Yeah.
Because they don't want to understand.
But why? That's key. Why does that happen? Why are they blocking that info? Why?
That's a curiosity to me, because a couple of times, only a couple of times, have I gotten somebody cornered where they know they can't answer the question, and they can't dodge the question either, and they can't escape. Right? And then they go into a psychological meltdown.
Right.
Because they can't admit.
Is that not immoral?
A model?
Scottish.
Oh,
Immoral. Immoral. Is that action of doing that not a bad action? I'd say maybe it is.
Yeah, well, it's the same as an intervention or waking somebody up. The first response is to get angry at the person who woke you. Right? Even if you're doing them a favor.
Well, that's from your perspective, the favor.
If I'm saving you from a lie, if you save me from a lie, I have believed all kinds of ridiculous shit. I was a Christian for a while. I was a neo-pagan occultist after that.
Right.
I was seduced by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada.
Over my head.
Yeah, Krishna. I read his books. I believed in a whole lot of supernatural mumbo jumbo. Okay. I believed in extraterrestrials, Bigfoot, Loch Ness monsters, theory of Atlantis, everything required to be a Ghostbuster. I believed all of that shit.
Nice.
And I was proud that I was that gullible.
Okay.
But then one by one I find out there's no truth to all of these things. And it's not that I have to prove they're wrong.
Can I ask you a question?
It's enough that there's no proof they're right.
Did you come to that conclusion by yourself through your natural exploration of it? Or did somebody blast it out of you?
On occasion, it's somebody points it out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Most of the time, it's me doing it myself. The big one for me was Curlian photography. There was a show called In Search Of in the 1970s. It was hosted by Leonard Nimoy. For whatever reason, everything he said sounded logical.
Yeah, right.
So he's doing the show, and they have this thing where they have these photoelectric plates, and they put a leaf on the plate, they press the plate, and then they turn the thing on. It takes a picture of the leaf. It's not a normal photograph. It shows it up in like tiny phosphorescent blue sparks for the electrical imagery.
Okay.
You see all the veins in the leaf and everything.
Yeah.
Then they cut the leaf in half, and that part's real. Then they cut the leaf in half, put it on the photoelectric plate again, and do it again. And then initially, you only get this part of the leaf that you would expect to see. But on an overexposure, you see the whole leaf. That is proof of life force. Or so I thought, as a 12-year-old boy watching this show that I thought was science. Because they didn't say, this is bullshit, they said, this is science.
Right, yeah.
So I'm being lied to.
Okay.
So I'm a grown-up, I think, you know what, I haven't seen anything about Curlian photography in many years, so let me just look it up now that I got the internet, and I find it where there was an admission by Leonard Nimoy that they made all that shit up just for entertainment.
I understand.
I was fucking devastated. I based my belief system on this scientific evidence that turned out to be hoax.
So, you use the term proof. Isn't proof quite a strong term? Shouldn't it just simply be that a religion or a hypothesis or a theistic hypothesis just has to be rendered probable by the evidence? I think proof is too much. Sorry?
Proof is an overwhelming preponderance of evidence.
I need to understand what you mean by proof.
An overwhelming preponderance of evidence.
An overwhelming preponderance of evidence. But you don't need that for you to be rational to believe something. All you have to be is that your belief has to be rendered probable by the evidence. That means over 0.5 probability. Then it's rational to believe it.
Okay.
If you're saying
the example I just gave would be it would be rational if I'd been told about this science to make that conclusion.
Yes, so that's important. No, it was just when you were saying before about religion, you said you didn't find any proof. So I was just thinking, well, proof sounds like a bit too much of a strong term.
Okay.
Because it seems like you're saying it has to be significantly probable
I will
for someone to be
concede that.
rational to believe it.
I will concede that. Okay. Where proof is an overwhelming preponderance of evidence, I don't have evidence of religion.
Okay.
So the evidence would be objectively verifiable facts. It's not, God came into my heart.
Yes.
That doesn't work. But there has to be something that positively supports one position or only supports one position, so eliminating another. Mm-hmm. And it has to be one over the other. So you can't have this, logically, you can't have the same fact be evidence of two different mutually exclusive conclusions. Then it's just a fact. Okay. It doesn't become evidence until it points to one or the other.
All right, nice one.
So summary definition would be a fact that indicates.
Okay.
So a previous question that I was saying was when you said that you've encountered people that forcefully try and extradite themselves from a situation that have to confront their cognitive dissonance with evidence that contradicts their spiritual belief. Mouthful. That there, why does that occur? Why does that fear occur? Because it's going to lead me to my next point, I suppose. Because maybe for a lot of people, being confronted, taking away, you would say it as a lie, religious ideas, maybe taking that lie away from them could result in something worse if it's not done in I imagine, a slow, incremental, self-discovery way. You know? That's something I want to put forward. If they're panicking after having the reasons why they lived a certain way taken out from them, maybe that's not a good thing to do.
I disagree.
You disagree? Why?
Because there's no value in the lie.
No value at all.
Right.
But what if you're in a...
You can get value out of watching Star Wars.
What about the reduction of suffering?
But you shouldn't base your history on a galaxy a long time ago and far, far away.
Obviously, right. But I'm
if
saying...
you're judged for whether you believe Star Wars, then it becomes a moral issue.
There'll be a lack of instrumental value. You won't be able to successfully reach your goals if you're basing your belief on something that doesn't correspond to reality.
Not necessarily at all.
No, you won't be able. Your ultimate goals. If you're basing your belief on something that's completely false, okay, it doesn't correspond to reality. That proposition does not correspond to reality.
Let's say
so
Islam.
If you are,
Let's say Islam. Say you have a devout Muslim,
yes.
and maybe you are of the view that this is nonsense,
yes.
and they live by other people's accounts, a successful, peaceful life.
Yes.
Well, is that not a refutation?
No, but their ultimate goal would be worshipping Allah and would be getting to heaven.
Right.
But if that's false, that's not going to happen. So if they're basing their belief on it, there is no instrumental value on it.
But after their death, if there's no consequence.
Yes,
then,
I'm saying there is no instrumental, but there is a consequence because they've lost out on something that they had on this earth. So there is no instrumental value on them basing that belief on that.
So you're wanting to...
I'm a Christian, by the way.
You're wanting... Okay, that's fine. You're wanting other people to live by the values that you...
I would just say... No, I would not say that. I would just say a rational person should proportion their belief to the evidence. But that's what I would say. And because there's intrinsic value in that it's good to seek truth, but there's also instrumental value in that because then you will more than likely successfully achieve your goals.
Yep.
But if you're basing your belief on something that's completely false, you're not going to do that ultimately. Maybe you'll have some minor goals or mediatory goals or things like that. You'll be able to help people on that. But your ultimate goal of getting to heaven won't happen. So what's the point of doing that? You're basing your life on something that's not going to ultimately be successful.
I'm not sure that we can say that with certainty. I'm not sure.
No, I'm not saying with certainty. I don't believe you can. It's very rare. Things that you can hold to with certainty are very rare. I'll say mathematical and logical truths. But outside of that, things have to be held with a certain probability value. So I would say some things are significantly probable. That you exist next to me, I hold to it being significantly probable. I don't hold to it with certainty. I might be completely hallucinating. Okay? But I would say that if someone wants to successfully reach their goals, they should base their belief on something which is supported by the evidence.
Okay, let me say this.
Sure. Back what he just said. Hume said that we have to make these certain presuppositions that other people exist, for example, because it is literally not possible to function otherwise. So we have to make the same assumption that an animal would, or a beast or a baby would make, because it's the only way to succeed. It's the only way to exist.
Right. In the physical world. Yeah, for real. So what I would say to what you were saying there, man, is... if I could slip my mind. Fuck. Sorry. No, that's why I wanted to jump in, but you went forward, but it doesn't matter. So,
yeah, I was just saying about instrumental value goals.
Yeah, so for me, it seems that it's possible to live in the world as a scientific rationalist, but still hold non-scientifically provable spiritual beliefs and live successfully. For me, you can do both.
Yeah, you can do that. I'm just saying it won't be rational. It won't be practically rational.
Yeah. Rational means the belief is based on evidence.
Right,
if the belief is not based on evidence, then it is not rational by definition.
That's fine. That's
so
fine.
It is irrational.
I'm not concerned. I'm concerned with the real-world practical application.
Should we promote irrational beliefs?
How can you have a practical application of a spiritual belief?
No, I mean...
And if you don't have a practical application of spirit, then you literally have no value in that belief.
Is it for you to apply value to somebody else's beliefs?
Yes.
If I'm going to have the belief...
I mean, yes.
I mean,
if you believe in Jesus and I say you shouldn't, why should I be saying that?
I'm saying that we can sit down together and think about what beliefs are intrinsically or instrumentally valuable. We can go and do that.
Yeah.
I think we can. There are some things which would just seem like they have no value in it at all. Can't think off the top of my head, but you probably can sit down and think, if someone devoted their whole life towards doing this just seems like it has no value. You understand? But obviously we debate about the level of value. So something might have more value to someone than another thing. But that something has value, I think we can agree on.
Because I'm from, I suppose, an anarchistic viewpoint of not wishing to force any of my ideas or viewpoints or value structures upon other people. Force the key word.
Yeah, if I may.
Sure.
The reason I'm an activist is because I don't live here. I live in Texas.
So it's more
Where the right-wing the religious right owns and controls everything at every level of state and federal government. And they are legislating their religion onto us.
Okay, yeah.
And while they say that they want smaller government, they want a smaller government that governs everything you do in the bedroom.
a theistic government.
Right.
Yeah, right. No, I'm opposed to that. Absolutely. I'm just very interested in the other ideas that we were saying.
I would say that we can impose our beliefs on certain things. I would say that as a society, we should impose our belief that child paedophilia is incorrect. I think you would agree with it.
Well, sure, but this is quite different from talking about value structures.
No, but I'm saying to you, you just said categorically, you made a categorical statement that you are someone who shouldn't impose beliefs. I say no, there are certain beliefs that we would do that. But there are certain things that we would, think about maybe we shouldn't do.
I understand. What I meant was quite specific.
Yeah, I was just responding.
Like, for example, a belief in the afterlife. You shouldn't. I want you not to hold that belief because it's stupid for you. I'm not with that. I'm not with that at all. But the other thing, well, yeah.
There is a downside even just to believing in the afterlife, because people have a tendency to give the thing where that this life is just an arduous trial that you have to make it through in order to get to your great prize. And so they end up depriving themselves of every pleasure they have in life because every pleasure is somehow a sin.
Right, I get
So
you.
that person has literally wasted the only life they know they actually have.
Wasted from your perspective, though.
If they can't even enjoy living and in effect don't live,
Wasted from
they've
their
wasted their
perspective
lives.
as well. Because if there are certain experiences that you could have had but you don't know about them, then by definition you've wasted a certain aspect of your life because your society hasn't been open to allowing you those experiences, and that's the problem.
Are all experiences worth experiencing?
Well, no, having the option of if we
let's
just,
look at the
talk
concept
about sexual experiences, S&M, some people are into it, some aren't.
Let's talk about
But
forbidden
you can
knowledge.
at least choose, and you can find out information for yourself about what that entails, and then make a judgment.
Right.
So because society is that open.
Okay.
So there's the concept of forbidden knowledge that religion has, that you're not supposed to know certain things. That is abhorrent to me. You can know anything that you're interested in. There's no such thing as forbidden knowledge. Find out whatever you want, and learn. Be open to that. You shouldn't be punished for that sort of thing, but that's the kind of thing that religion is teaching.
What do you think about nihilistic views on life?
Well, I do this video thing where I argue with somebody I don't agree with, and I try to reason with them and them with me, and occasionally I come up to a brick wall because I'm talking to a crazy person, or on a rare occasion I'll talk to somebody who actually changes my mind, and one of them was a nihilist.
Okay.
I had always been lied to about what nihilists are.
Okay.
I thought
So it's
that
different
I was
schools of
told
thought.
that nihilists believe in nothing. No. Not believing anything on faith is not the same thing as believing in nothing. There's a subtle but important difference. So what the basis of nihilism is we don't believe that a purpose to life is arbitrarily applied by some external being. If you want your life to mean anything, you get to decide what you want it to mean and then work
You
to that
manufacture
end.
your own meaning. Yes.
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 And your life doesn't have to mean anything if you don't want to, and most life doesn't.
Well, from a certain perspective.
There's plenty of chickens whose lives means nothing more than what I eat. So that's not a meaning.
Don't say
of
that
life.
to the vegans.
Yeah, I know. I'm having that. I'm wrestling with that too.
Oh well, yeah, that's a tough one. The morality of it, I have to say, as somebody that eats meat and then think about it, sometimes, tough times. But anyway, yeah.
Sorry, you said before, just tracking back a lot. You said before that you used to be a Christian. I just wanted to know the reason why you stopped being a Christian
The day
specifically.
I was reborn in Christ.
Okay, can you just detail that a little bit?
That day, I found myself just kind of like floating around in a euphoria, like a daze, It often happens. It doesn't happen just to Christians either. I've heard people talk about accepting Krishna and going for the Beatles talking about something similar. So I know it happens in everyone. But I remember asking a friend of mine who is now a Southern Baptist minister running a Christian school who teaches creationism.
Oh.
Yeah, but he was my best friend in high school. I asked him, how do I know that this is really Jesus and that I'm not just fooling myself? And he grabbed me by both shoulders with a huge beaming smile and said, just keep telling yourself it's Jesus until you believe it. Instantly not a Christian anymore.
Wow, he really dropped the ball there.
That was so dishonest. Now, he really believes in fake it till you make it.
I see.
He preaches that. Lie to yourself until you believe it. That's his faith.
Just an interesting point. Is there not some truth to that of when you something akin to a concept like manifesting destiny, a certain thing of that if you want to will something into existence, it might in some sense manifest itself in your life. I don't mean actually. I mean in your perceptions.
I know that people believe that if they believe that there are people who believe that if I believe hard enough, then reality will change according to the power of their will.
Right.
And if it doesn't, they've convinced themselves anyway, so they wouldn't know if it hadn't.
That's it. Yeah.
So it's either way, it's a delusion.
But I mean, just trying to understand that what that Baptist preacher was saying to you is not historical Christianity. Historical Christianity would say, my understanding of it would be, not that you just believe it, even though despite the evidence, you believe it in line with the evidence. There's always been. So I would say that there is evidence in form of Christianity for theism and for Christian theism specifically.
Okay, pick one.
Yeah, so I would say, what you want to go theism or?
It's not first time.
Yeah, I know. The way I'll think about it is that I would say that the evidence has to render the hypothesis probable. And the way that we can understand that is the simplest hypothesis that leads us to expect the evidence is most probably true. I would say that there is a God, the proposition, the hypothesis that there is a God, is the simplest hypothesis that we have that leads us to expect the evidence of, number one, that there is a universe, that this universe exists.
We're going to assume there's a God and therefore there must be a universe?
No. So I'm saying when you are looking at an inductive hypothesis, you will formulate the hypothesis and then you will have to... When you're looking at an inductive hypothesis, you will formulate the hypothesis, H, and you'll have the evidence, and you'll say, well, by a certain criteria, does this hypothesis lead us to expect the evidence when we would not expect it? So if the hypothesis was false, we would not expect to have this evidence.
Okay, so as we mentioned before, evidence is the fact that indicates. So what is the fact that indicates a God?
No, so evidence is just simply a proposition that corresponds to reality.
It's a body of facts.
Yeah, so you can state it that way. Okay, so the proposition that there is a universe, that the universe exists. Okay, we're not disputing that. That's the evidence. Now,
no, that's not evidence. That's the fact.
Yeah, but I'm saying an evidence, you're taking it in as evidence.
That's circular reasoning. That's the question-begging fallacy.
How is that? Sorry.
That's assuming. That's calling it creation, expecting a creator.
No.
When if we call it reality, we don't expect a realtor.
No. So can I explain? So when you are looking at something, you will go and say, this is evidence that I am then trying to explain by my hypothesis. If my hypothesis fails to explain it, then it cannot be evidence that supports
and in order to be a hypothesis, it has to be tested.
Yes.
And falsifiable.
No, I would not say that. Depends.
Well, then it can't be tested.
No. So I will try and...
If you can't falsify it, you can't test it.
That's the fundamental principle.
One second. I'll try and say... One second. I'll try and say firstly, the reason why I denied it at the beginning is it depends how you define falsifiability. So if you can just explain to me what you mean by falsifiability.
If anything is...
Yes.
If you propose a hypothesis, there has to be a way... You can't always prove it right.
Yes.
Right? So, there's a rule that you can't prove anything right in science.
Yes.
Because if you do, then we lead to the religious thing about asserting absolute truth.
Right.
Yes.
But you can prove things false.
Yes.
So if you propose a hypothesis, first it must be backed by evidence. We still haven't got to that. The hypothesis has to be based on evidence for there to be a hypothesis. We still don't have evidence of God. Then the hypothesis, there has to be a way to disprove it. If it's wrong, there has to be a way to show that it is wrong. So if you have a hypothesis that there is a God, there's got to be a way to test it.
Yes.
And if it fails that test, it proves there is no God.
Yes. So I would say, there is a certain criteria that you will utilize, scientific criteria or historical criteria when you're trying to assess a hypothesis. Does the evidence I have support the hypothesis according to this criteria?
Let's
so
start
firstly, I would say...
First, you have to have the evidence for the hypothesis.
Yeah.
So what evidence?
I'm not disputing that, but can I just say about the criteria first?
Right.
See if you agree with me with the criteria or not. Okay, so firstly, the hypothesis has to lead us to expect the evidence. Okay. Secondly, the evidence cannot.
Why would it lead us to? Okay, so that's if the hypothesis
Is
passed,
true.
then we would put down a prediction. If the hypothesis is successful, it would be like this. Can't prove it right, but it lines up with what we predicted. That's what you're saying?
No, so no, I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying if you are saying something is so, and you are bringing in something to say why it is so, the thing that you are bringing as a hypothesis that explains that data needs to explain the data. So I'll give you an example. Can I give you an example? So I don't agree with the moral argument that people bring for the existence of God. Okay, so you have people like William Lane Craig and other Christian philosophers who will bring in the moral argument that says moral values support God's existence. I don't believe that. I believe moral values are necessary. They're necessary moral principles, and they will exist irrespective of God. So you cannot use that as evidence because it will be there even if the hypothesis was false. But if you have a hypothesis that leads you to expect the evidence when it should not be expected, then that can be used as evidence for the hypothesis.
It sounds like you're talking about testing a hypothesis, and the hypothesis doesn't fail.
Okay, yes.
If I'm right, we should expect.
Let me go phone Jay Smith. Jay Smith trying to make a comeback, you know.
He's returned.
Praise be to one who made us righteous in God. Praise be to Lord Jesus Christ. Bible tells us, in the beginning, man and woman all sin against God. All of you, we all sin against God. We all choose to walk away from God. But God of Bible gave us the solution. Solution was the eternal word of God. Risen Lord Jesus Christ would come and take away the sin of the world. Eternal word
I'm going back in a minute.
Changed, perfect, comes down, lays his life down on the cross for mankind. Therefore, he deserves all of our praises.
Amen to that.
Jesus Christ.
All the time.
Today, we want to look at another eternal word of God, which stands out as Quran, corrupted, changed, corrupted.
Riz is on that still. So man can catch that later in full. Let me go back to Aron Rock. I looks like Subboor's coming in. Is that Subboor's ready to jump in?
100 examples. Someone super that's crazy, or it's just done tight the wrong way.
I'm not saying that the universe is evidence of the universe.
No, I'm not saying so. But there has been alternate explanations of why there is a universe. And you were going to say, well,
What if we don't know it? What if we don't know it?
you might take a proof fact.
No. What if we say we don't know?
Yes, so you were going to take a proof
Well, there is a universe. We'll accept. We're not in dispute. There is a universe.
But we don't have.
The answer is I don't know.
Yes.
And I think the dishonest answer is a God did.
Yes. Oh no, but by the way, I'm not saying about the universe coming into existence. Like myself, I don't believe the Kalam cosmological argument's a good argument. I really don't, because I would agree with your position that maybe the best position scientifically is agnostic about the issue. Okay, but I would go and say that my whole point about bringing about the universe is the contingency of the universe. That there is a universe in the first place, even if it's been here for an infinite amount of time or for a finite amount of time, cries out for an explanation. Because it is simpler, like you said, that there is nothing at all.
That's still the question-begging fallacy.
Why is it so?
Assuming that existence requires an existor.
No. I would just simply say that you should have less brute facts within your worldview. That you should try, and that's the whole point. Yes.
You mentioned that you had evidence for God.
Yes.
What is it?
Okay. So I said to you, firstly, taken in as evidence that there is a universe, which you would agree with me.
Okay, so
there is a
there's
universe, and we are not
fact of
debating.
the universe.
Yes, there is a fact of the universe.
What is the evidence of God?
So then you go and say, should that, going according to the criteria, should there be a universe irrespective of God?
Yes.
Why?
Because Nobody believes in absolute philosophical nothing. Not even the cosmologists believe in absolute philosophical nothing.
What do you mean by absolute philosophical nothing? Just so I'm saying.
Absolute nothing.
Okay, so absolute nothing.
There logically has to be something rather than nothing. Because nothing is not possible.
Why is nothing not possible? Sorry.
Physicists, they say nothing is not.
No, but you said philosophically, so I'm trying to understand. Metaphysically, why is nothing impossible? Because to show that nothing is impossible, you have to derive
Well, if you think about it this way,
contradiction from that.
If anywhere there is nothing,
yes,
then the place where there is nothing has a boundary, and that boundary is something. And that already precludes that you can't have anything anywhere if you have nothing somewhere.
But you're using the modal term can and cannot. You are saying that it's logically impossible. Logical impossibility is a very strong statement.
Yeah.
Because you are saying nothing. The statement nothing entails a contradiction. Same thing like a married bachelor entails a contradiction. That's why it's logically impossible.
Right,
How
so-
is that there is nothing entails a contradiction?
I did just explain that.
No, but it doesn't entail a contradiction. This entail a contradiction, you then define the terms and they cancel
If
each other out.
nothing exists,
Yes.
and if nothing exists somewhere,
Yes.
and something exists somewhere else, then the place for the nothing is a place
In
for the
relation
nothing.
to the something.
Yes.
And it's a boundary with it, so it's a something.
Yes.
So
No, but-
absolute nothing is not possible.
No,
If
but
there's
you used
something
two different.
somewhere,
You used two different terms. You said nothing exists somewhere. You didn't say everywhere. If you said
It
nothing,
doesn't matter.
One second.
Nothing can't exist anywhere if something exists somewhere else.
If you said nothing existed everywhere, but there is something, then those things will contradict each other. So you said nothing exists somewhere and something exists somewhere. How does that cancel each other out?
So
yes.
the hypothesis is
Yes.
so whether there is a God or
Yes.
not, there's something instead of nothing. So
Yes.
where is the fact that indicates the God?
Okay, so I was trying to say to you, firstly, that there is a universe, that the universe exists, because it is not logically necessary that there is a universe. It is a logical contingent fact.
Nor is it relevant.
Sorry?
Nor is it relevant.
Why is it irrelevant?
Well, I don't know what you're referring
Yes.
to by a universe,
Yes.
because you say a
So I'm saying the
universe.
totality of reality that
Okay,
it
so-
could be a
so we
multiverse,
agree
it could be whatever.
That with a God or
Yes.
without a God, there's still something rather than nothing.
No, but I'm saying why should there be? That's the whole question.
Because it's impossible to have absolute nothing. Because
I
if something
think- yeah, I
exists
think you're-
somewhere, logically, there can't be nothing anywhere.
No, but I'm trying to say to you that that doesn't link up what you are saying.
Okay.
I'm trying-
And then
yes.
we're just not going to get past
Okay,
it.
yeah. All I was just trying to say to you is that if you have a contingent fact, you are then trying to explain the contingent fact by
so-
putting a hypothesis that explains the fact.
So, in
yes.
my hypothesis,
Yes.
no God,
No God, yes.
no nothing.
No, nothing, okay.
It's not possible to have nothing.
Yes,
So
okay.
you have to have
Okay.
something.
Yes.
That something takes
Yes.
the form of a universe.
Yes.
God or no God, we have a universe.
God or no God, we have this.
Right. So
Okay, go with-
where's the indicator that there's a God?
So I'm simply saying to you that, let's say you're not assuming that there is a God, or you're not putting the God as a hypothesis, that there is a universe, okay, we
it's
agree.
unnecessary.
Okay, we agree on it. But then you have to go and say, either you take the universe as existence, that exists in the here and now, as a brute fact. We don't know, we might never know, it's just a brute fact. And there are some things in reality which are brute facts, which we can't explain, okay? So you will have to take it as that, or you have to go and say that there is a deeper, more ultimate explanation for the universe, which we might
Why
not
do
have
we
at the
have
moment.
to have an explanation?
No, I just said to you, you have two options. So either you take it as a brute fact, you say there is no explanation, and there cannot be
We
an
don't have to
explanation.
say
that
there
we
is
don't
no
know it.
explanation.
Or I was going to
What
say...
if we don't know
Yes.
the explanation?
Yes.
So we expect that there probably is one.
Yes, one second.
We don't know what the explanation
Yes.
is. What is your evidence
Yes.
that the explanation is a God?
Because I'm saying to you that it's, according to the criteria that you agreed with me, it actually fulfills the criteria. Because if you think about it, if
The
there...
criteria I agreed
Yes.
with is it God or no God, we have a universe.
No, that wasn't the criteria we said at the beginning. So the criteria we said at the beginning that you can generally use for a scientific or historical hypothesis is, if the hypothesis is true, it should lead us to explain, to expect the evidence. Yes.
Let's understand it.
Yes.
To form the hypothesis,
Yes.
you must have evidence indicating the thing that you're looking at.
No, that's not
So
necessarily
you use
true.
the
You're assuming
you have evidence that
Well, then
indicates
it's
a
a
God.
hypothesis of no
You then
evidence.
come up with a hypothesis to test that evidence to see if it is.
No. It depends what type of probability theory you're holding to. If you're holding... One second. So if you're holding... Sorry?
depends your methodology.
Yes. So I'm saying it depends on probability theory that you're holding to.
Yeah, I don't like
no,
that because the probability that I did everything I did yesterday at the exact time that I did everything I did in that exact order, if you measure up all those, how improbable all those things are, it's impossible.
Yes.
And yet I did it.
One second, but I'm not arguing against that. I'm saying to you, it depends, your position that you just said depends on the probability theory that you're holding to. What I was talking about here is a logical...
I disagree.
1 second.
Probability has nothing to do with it.
Yes, it does. Of course it does. We're talking about hypotheses. Sorry, 1 second.
How is it possible to create a probability of God?
What do you mean, how is it possible?
Because to say that something is probable, you must be able to say that something isn't probable. And how do we get factors to relate to the probability of an ultimate being? I don't see how I could think what's the probability.
You can use things like Bayes' theorem. Bayes' theorem is a theorem of probability. So simply you have yeah, atheists can use it. I'm saying generally you can use them anyway. No, I'm saying anyone. I said anyone can use it. Doctors use it. It's just a simple probability factor. So you can use Bayes' theorem, have a hypothesis, have the evidence, and go and see if the evidence is likely given the hypothesis, and see if the evidence is likely given. Yes. Evidence. So I was simply saying to you, firstly, we have a contingent fact here that there is a universe. We have another contingent.
What is the evidence that the universe was brought about by a God?
You're jumping in tonight? Can we get there first, lay down the evidence, and then we can say, does it explain or not?
I don't think we've laid down any evidence.
Yeah, I'm saying, can we do that? I'm saying, can we do that?
I'm asking you to do that.
Yeah, I'm saying can, but you jump in, so it's quite difficult.
Hello?
Can you, just while he's taking that,
Yes.
have you defined what you mean by God?
Yes? Oh, no.
How people in Canada.
Firstly, no, I think I did
I'm surrounded by
slightly.
people in cameras, so quick.
I think I did slightly, yes. But firstly, we're trying to say evidence, but he's jumping in a little bit, so, and then dismissing and saying it's not evidence, and then saying I need to bring evidence again.
I need to understand what you
Okay,
mean
so
by God.
what I would say simply by God is that there is a personal being who's omnipotent, omniscient, and perfectly good.
Right. Okay, so we've got that.
Okay.
So we know now where you stand.
Okay.
Right? So that's what needs falsified.
Yes. Okay. Yes. Yeah. I'll agree. Okay. So I would say to just going with that evidence.
What evidence?
It's just defined God at last.
Can I get there? Because I mean you're jumping in. You're jumping in.
You've had the floor.
Yes.
And you keep going. This is
Yes.
disrespectful.
No, of course not. Yes.
All I'm going to say is
Yes.
you keep coming around with the same arguments.
Yeah.
He's asked you at least 3 or 4
Yes.
times
Yes.
your view,
Yes.
your life view,
Yes.
your view on God.
Yes.
Or show
What is
the
that
evidence.
evidence?
Yes.
But you
But-
honestly haven't started.
Do you know what happens though? Do you know what happens when I'm saying? 1 second.
Can you not just get past
But-
this
but what-
initial hurdle and then talk about...
But can I finish?
Sure.
When I'm bringing it,
Well,
normally.
not really, because
So this is why I like doing evolution.
Can I finish my point?
People ask me for evidence of evolution, I give it to them right then. And I don't have to have an argument. I don't have to have a philosophy. I don't have to talk
can I-
about probabilities.
Can
I can just show the facts.
But can I just say something?
Yes, please.
I tried to say the evidence, but then you question me on it, and then we have to go back on it. So I'm saying,
Can you just
can I just say, and then we move on? Then we can start saying.
Can you just tell Aaron you're
Okay,
definition
so
of God?
one second.
No,
So-
I want to hear the evidence.
Okay, so that there is a universe that there is a contingent universe.
Okay, so that's the fact, not evidence.
First,
so what is the
man,
evidence?
goodness sakes, can you
Right,
like
so this fact
just
is, this
okay, fact, evidence, whatever you
whether
want to
there
call
is a
it.
God or whether there is not a God, this fact remains the
But
same.
can I
so it
just-
is not evidence.
But can I just say something? Let me just say my things and then critique it, because you're critiquing each time and then I have to circle back, answer you, and then start again. Can I just say it and then you critique it? Is that fine? Okay. So that there is a universe, first line of evidence, fact, or whatever. Okay. That there is a contingent universe. That things within the universe are conformed to simple natural laws. Okay.
Right, another
That's number
indication
two.
that there is no God.
That's fine. Assess it later, but I'm saying yes, okay? Thirdly, that these simple natural laws are such by which to bring about the evolution of rational creatures, okay?
Okay,
And
another,
fourth,
the way you
okay,
phrase
fourth-
it is a little muddy, but
Okay.
another indication that there is no God.
Fourthly, can I finish?
God, please.
Okay. And the fourth one will be that these rational agents are conscious. Okay. They are conscious beings. Okay, one second.
What does consciousness have to do with
Okay.
anything?
Can we assess it in a second? Because I mean, every time like you're jumping in saying, "Oh, but that's not."
We got to like
that's not-
5, so let's
Okay.
keep going.
So no.
How many are there?
We'll just go with the 4. We'll go with the 4.
How many evidences of no God is he going to give me? Go ahead.
All you're stating,
I mean-
the facts. You're not stating any
Okay.
evidence, you're stating facts.
Number 1. Okay. I think it's better first. I've said those 4 things, but let's just clarify. What do you mean by evidence, and what do you mean by
fact
fact?
that indicates
So-
an objectively verifiable fact that is
That-
positively
that indicates
indicative
what?
of or exclusively concordant with only one available option over any other. This universe concords with no God. Every one of your examples concords with no God.
But can I say to you, in the philosophical literature, that will not be evidence. That will literally.
I would agree. You
no,
have not given evidence.
I'm saying the way you define evidence is not evidence. Because
But it is.
a proposition can have evidential value for multiple things, not just one thing.
But we're talking about scientific evidence.
Sorry?
I understand that historians may have a different
I'm not talking about
application,
historians.
But I know that you're not talking about historians. I'm saying that historians have a different context of what evidence means. But in science, evidence has a strict definition. It is the facts that indicate.
Okay, but I'm not talking about science. I'm simply no.
Yes,
one second.
you are.
When you're talking about theism, you're talking about metaphysics. Metaphysics is a
Sorry, I'm
philosophical
talking about
discipline.
science. So I'm
but
looking for evidence.
No, but hold on.
If you're telling me,
But can I jump in? When you are talking or when you are debating about the existence of God, it's a metaphysical discussion. It's not a scientific discussion.
It is.
No, one second.
If there was a God, it would be a matter of
One
science.
second. You bring in scientific evidence to support the hypothesis or not, but it is a metaphysical discussion.
and science is the only
So I don't know
tool
what
we
you're
have to
talking
test anything.
Of course it's not. You have metaphysics.
You can't test anything.
How can
in
you not
metaphysics.
test things in metaphysics?
How can you?
Sorry.
In
So,
metaphysics.
okay, that there are moral values. Can we find that out or not? Or can you find that in a scientific way?
Yes, you can find it.
In science? Tell me how you
Yes,
do that in science.
absolutely.
Using the
Everything we
physical laws.
actually know about anything, we get from
Wait, so
science.
hold on. That statement is self-defeating, just to tell
How?
you. That everything that we know comes from science. Is that scientific?
Yes.
How is that? Tell me. Did you use a scientific methodology to get to that statement?
Yes.
No, it's a self-defeating
Because
statement.
everything we want to say is true or false. There is a scientific way to determine
No,
that.
one second. You just made a categorical statement that's self-defeating.
But it's not self-defeating.
You said everything that we know, I'm paraphrasing maybe, everything that we can know to be true is found through science.
We can demonstrate.
We can
that
demonstrate it
through
through science. Now that statement demonstrates it through science.
What?
Demonstrate that sentence that you just uttered through
Okay.
science.
All right.
Because you
Easy
believe
enough.
it to be true.
Yeah.
Yes.
Pick anything.
No, that statement.
Yeah.
Demonstrate it through science.
I will with
Tell
this
me now.
example. Pick anything you want. Let's
No, your
anything you want. Pick from all
we
of the
playing
things
with
you want to
words?
say.
You didn't understand what I just said.
I
Your
think I
statement.
did.
No, your statement you just made.
Was
Every-
it
one second.
anything that you want to say is true or false, we can use science to determine
Okay.
that.
Now that statement, is it true?
The statement.
The statement you just
yes,
uttered.
because
Okay.
we can demonstrate.
Now
that, and
demonstrate
that was
it
the
through
example.
science. Demonstrate
Good.
it through science.
Then are you going to let us do that?
Do it.
Let me do the thing you're asking me to do.
Demonstrate that
I
sentence
said, yeah,
that you just said. That is true through
Yes,
science.
I'm exactly doing
tell
that
me
thing.
that.
Quit interrupting the answer.
I won't. I'll let you speak. Sorry.
Okay, with the question.
Hold
So
on,
I
I'm
said,
sorry. We'll catch up after, yeah?
anything you want to say is true or false.
Yes.
We can demonstrate through science. You want to say true, and pick something that you would say is true or false. That you think we can't prove through science.
But you don't understand what I just asked you. That categorical statement that you just uttered.
It's demonstrated by this example.
1 second.
It's demonstrated by this example.
The proposition itself.
Right.
That sentence.
Right.
That you just
very
uttered.
sentence.
That sentence.
That exact
But
sentence
1
is
second.
demonstrated by the example I'm giving you.
But 1 second. That sentence that you just uttered, you did not use the scientific methodology to hold to that sentence being true.
Yes, I did, because I
Tell
can
me
demonstrate
how.
it.
How scientifically?
And test it scientifically by giving you the example. The example was anything you want to say is true or false. We can use science to demonstrate that. So pick something.
Shall I do it? Shall I
No,
do it?
but-
Because this is a waste of time, man.
This
We've
is
had
my
why is it
sentence.
a waste of time?
Because we've had the same thing maybe 70
Because
times.
what's it? No.
His
But
point is actually right. What you're speaking about is logical positivism, and he's challenging you.
yes, I'm saying to you, yes, you are because you're using the verification
No,
principle.
because I don't
You are
even
using
get
it's a
into
self-defeating.
verification.
It's a self-defeating statement.
What he actually said is correct. That you're saying that you can statement that science is our best form of knowledge. You can't test that scientifically. That's self-refuting. So he's actually right.
Yes, you can.
No, but I'm saying.
And the way to demonstrate that very sentence was to use the example he's asking for.
No, it's not. No. So 1 second.
And I'm not talking about logical positivism.
So I'm not.
And I don't get into verificationism.
No,
Everybody
but
wants to paint me with something I don't know.
No, but I'm saying that is a form of the verification principle. That's why it hasn't been held by the majority of philosophers at least 40, 50 years.
I don't hold the verification.
But you have just
either.
uttered it. You've just literally uttered it. Yes, it is, and it's self-defeating.
It's not self-defeating.
It is, because it shoots
If I
itself
can
in the
demonstrate, if I can demonstrate the statement is true, and I can, then it's not
No,
self-defeating.
but you can't demonstrate it in a scientific way.
Yes,
That's the whole
we
way.
can.
How?
By the example I just gave you.
You can't demonstrate the verification principle through science.
All right, never mind.
No, that's what I'm saying. So it's
I
self-defeating.
think you are self-refuting. We're having a nice time spinning around
No, I'm not.
circles
I'm just
here.
saying.
coming in from a neutral perspective. He's actually right.
I'm just
My
saying.
ass.
No, I'm just saying. Philosophically, it was self-defeating. But secondly, anyway.
Okay, it's not, because I can
Okay, one second. Moral truth.
To be honest, you're wrong on this point.
Okay.
Just this point.
Yeah.
The rest of the conversation I didn't really
I've
hear about. That
debated
point,
you. You were wrong on everything you ever said.
Okay, leaving
I'm
that
not going to
aside.
start being wrong now. It's
Okay.
because you're here.
Moral values. How can you find that out to be true or false in a scientific way?
Because of what?
the point that he actually made, you said that science is the best root of knowledge, correct?
Right.
And you
Well,
said
actually,
that,
I said that anything you say to be true or false, we have a scientific means of determining that.
Right.
And then he said, "Can you prove that sentence to be correct?" Yes, I can.
And you said
the way
scientifically.
that I can is by having him, and the way that I can prove it scientifically is to have you choose something that you can say is true or false,
then you can discuss it
and then we can show
scientifically.
how we can show that scientifically, proving the sentence, not self-refuting, demonstrably correct.
Can I explain why that's self-refuting?
It's
Let me
not.
just explain.
It's
Just
not.
one second, yeah? Look, I'm just coming in from a neutral perspective.
No,
No, you're
I
not.
am.
You're a
Because you two are actually
You're a
having this
theist,
debate.
though.
No, you're not.
Not
So?
entirely neutral.
So?
The
Why am I
key-
not
the
neutral?
core of the discussion
Why
is
could I
about
not be
the-
neutral if I'm a theist?
The core of the discussion was about whether God exists.
No,
No,
but
it
that's
wasn't.
what we
No,
were
no, that's
debating
not what
there.
I
We were
heard.
debating about.
I
Oh,
heard-
so it's
We were about
entirely
to-
in isolation.
No,
No, but we were debating about verification.
Okay.
Which, by the
Okay.
way,
I think it's disingenuous.
all I'm trying to say is, look,
No, but it wasn't about
his
theism. It was about
actual
verification
point
at
is
that
actually
point.
The
correct.
reason for talking
And
is
the
talking
reason
about
why-
theism.
One second.
His point is that we can't be talking about God in a scientific way. If God was real, and I'm asking for evidence of God, damn Skippy, I'm asking for scientific evidence.
That
Now,
means-
if he doesn't
wait, hang
have
on.
scientific
Wait, hang
evidence, he can tell me he has evidence of a different
Okay, but-
type that doesn't qualify as scientific
but-
evidence,
No,
in which
wait,
case
wait,
he
wait,
doesn't
wait,
have
wait,
no scientific
Can I just
evidence.
clarify something?
One point here. That means you disagree with methodological naturalism.
No, it doesn't.
So what does methodological naturalism mean?
Methodological naturalism means that you don't come up with supernatural explanations for things.
Yeah, but it
Fantastic.
assumes metaphysical
So,
naturalism.
How can you use a method which assumes methodological naturalism to prove something that's supernatural?
Again, if I'm asking for scientific evidence, then it is going to have to be a body of objectively verifiable facts that positively conform to only
But-
one
but-
object.
But can I just?
I did
Okay,
answer
wait,
the
I'm
answer
actually
the
I'm
question.
actually trying to help you out.
Okay,
for a
no,
second,
that's-
yeah? So, look,
You are maddening.
Aaron, relax. Here's the point, yeah? You're saying we should have scientific proof of God. That's what you're saying.
Yes, I'm asking
Right.
for scientific proof,
Okay,
yes,
okay.
or
so,
evidence.
So tell me
rather.
this. Why is it that philosophers of science wouldn't say that?
Because they're philosophers, and therefore they want to jack everything up. I don't know.
Okay.
I
I'll
don't
tell
think
you-
that's
no,
the
no,
way
no,
to
wait,
paint
wait,
philosophers.
hang on, I'll tell you
This
why.
guy,
Wait, hang on.
in our debate, he came up with
wait,
a
hang on.
philosophical definition of facts to mean
Okay.
exactly the
Wait, wait,
opposite
wait,
of what
hang
a
on,
fact
hang on,
means.
hang on.
I am a philosopher, so I feel a little bit
Yeah.
hurt by that.
Hang on.
Yeah, well,
I'm
I'm
studying
not
philosophy.
surprised.
Wait, hang on.
I hate philosophy because it is so misused.
But that's a philosophical statement.
Yes.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah, but I'm saying you hate philosophy, but you're using it.
Everyone
Okay, wait,
uses
Aaron,
yeah,
one
but
second.
Yeah, but then how can you
I
hate
said it
it?
because I see it so misused.
specific.
The way he chose, we know what a fact is in science, and he chose a philosophical definition, meaning something
maybe-
that can never be determined.
Right, so we're
That's
talking about two
exactly the
different
opposite of what a fact is.
Aaron, don't try and escape from this hole because you just dug yourself in a hole.
I'm not in a hole.
And the hole
I'm
that you're
standing
in-
on a mound, and it
No,
looks
you're not.
like you.
Actually,
Go
I'll
ahead.
tell you why you're in a hole. You're trying to make a submarine fly, and this is why it's not going to fly. The reason why it's not going to fly
I'm
is because
pretty sure I'm
in
not
your
making a
videos, in your videos, you subscribe to methodological naturalism, correct?
For science, yes, obviously.
Yes.
That is
And
the
now
scientific
you're asking.
method.
What's your name?
Josh.
Josh, you're asking Josh for scientific evidence of God.
Yes.
Do you realize they contradict each other? These two things.
So there's no scientific evidence of God.
You do
Right.
realize. you
I'm
don't
asking him, is there
Wait,
scientific
hang on.
Okay, fine then.
What I'm saying is something
faith,
different.
which we
Don't
were
make a
trying
straw
to
man.
establish?
Wait 1 second.
He said he had evidence of God. I'm trying to
The point I'm
demonstrate
making is you're contradicting yourself by
I'm
saying.
not contradicting myself.
We subscribe to methodological
He said
naturalism.
he had evidence of God, scientific evidence. I'm saying he does not. We are now demonstrating that he does not have scientific evidence of God.
The only thing I'm trying to show you is what you say in your videos is contradicting what you're saying right now.
No, it isn't.
I'll tell you why. Your videos, you're very explicitly clear that methodological naturalism is the way science works. Correct. Now, methodological naturalism means natural effects, natural causation. That's it.
Yep.
Correct.
Yep.
Now, for somebody to say, I want scientific evidence of God, you're trying to make a submarine fly.
He's saying, so when he says that he has scientific evidence of God, he's making a submarine fly?
No,
he's saying he has evidence.
You're all talking about it. Can I just jump in? Can I jump in for two seconds? Okay? Just to qualify a few things. All I was trying to say to you is that this is also a metaphysical discussion because you're talking about something in metaphysics.
Okay.
You can no, so I'm saying I don't believe that anything that I said to you was not evidence that you would agree to be evidence.
Well,
I would define evidence. That's why I said
I have to be explicit. We are talking about scientific evidence.
Hold 1 second. I would say evidence is just simply a proposition that renders a hypothesis as probable.
Right.
That is then taken on
and I
that
said
proposition.
And I specified
that proposition
in science it is necessarily a fact, objectively verifiable facts that indicate one conclusion over any other.
But then, I'm saying that can't be evidence.
Yes, that is.
Evidence.
Tell you why that's not true. That's not true because of the problem of underdetermination and the problem of unconceived alternatives.
The fact that the evidence is defined the way that I say is not true because of what?
You're saying there's one inference that you can make, right? But in philosophy of
science,
yes. Hang on. Let me just make a general point. You study philosophy of science, so do I. So tell me this or not. Is there not such a thing as the underdetermination of unconceived alternatives?
No,
right? Carl Stanford and all the rest, right? What that basically says is the same evidence you can make different inferences based upon. Now, if you're going to disagree with the philosophy of science, well, you're actually...
Which I'm obviously not doing.
No, you made it very clear that you don't agree with it, right?
No, I don't agree
with it. Basically, what you're saying
I'm giving
is
the correct definition of evidence, and I'm asking for it.
Yeah, but that's not
No, that's not what you're doing. What you're actually doing is this, Aaron. The reason why you're disagreeing with me and disagreeing with him is because you misunderstand the philosophy of science. That's the reason why you disagree. And you don't like it, which you've made explicitly clear.
No, I'll just say that
I haven't. And I don't disagree with the philosophy of science.
Okay, so tell me
He said
this.
he has evidence. He was not able to provide that.
So tell me this. Are you a scientific realist or an instrumentalist?
How are you defining evidence?
I'm not defining evidence.
No, but I just simply said...
I thought you might be evasive about that, so I want to press you on it.
Hang on. Are you a scientific realist or a scientific instrumentalist?
I don't know. Don't care.
Okay, wait.
How do you define evidence?
No. Wait, hang on. I'll tell you why that matters, and it bears on the evidence.
I want to know how you define evidence.
Should you not just be able to tell him the evidence is God?
The reason
I was very explicit and correct. So he says I'm wrong, so he's going to have to give me the correction. What is the actual definition?
Sure.
How are you defining evidence?
Sure. It depends on whether you are a scientific realist or a scientific instrumentalist.
How do you define evidence?
So let me explain. If you're a scientific realist, then that would mean...
How do you define evidence?
Aaron, 1 second. If you're scientific...
Is this a difficult question?
Aaron, relax. If you're a scientific realist, then that basically means that evidence for you is the evidence from science. Whatever you observe, whatever you see, whatever theories come up with, you believe that the unobservable world is the way that science is actually describing. However, if you're a scientific instrumentalist, then you believe in the observable claims, but you don't believe in the unobservable claims. This is also known as constructive empiricism. So when it comes to evidence, it matters whether you're a realist or constructive empiricist. Now tell me, as a philosopher of science, you're doing PhD or something
How
like
do
that.
you?
Tell me this, right?
Not in philosophy of science. Okay. No, so you'll know more than me.
Right.
So
look,
how do you define
if I'm a scientific instrumentalist, then evidence for me means something different for a scientific realist. Now Aaron says, I don't know. I don't think you know the difference between the two, to be honest.
No, I don't.
I don't accept your term. I don't.
Because I don't.
Relax, he can speak for himself.
Don't accept your term.
Relax, he can speak for himself. So, if you're a scientific realist and you're a scientific instrumentalist, evidence is going to mean two different things for you. That's what I'm saying.
I don't understand this argument at all.
I know
I asked you how
That's
you
what I'm trying to
define
educate.
evidence. I did not get an answer.
I did give you the answer. The answer was, it depends whether you're an
Yeah, it
instrumentalist or a
depends.
realist.
How do how do you define evidence?
Sure. Okay. So the way I define evidence is based on my view and the view that I hold.
Put that down.
And the view that I hold is that of constructive empiricism, and it has a subset view called selectionism. So I believe in the view of selectionism. Now, selectionism basically says this: we believe the claims about observables that scientists make, but claims about unobservables we do not accept. We are agnostic about them. Now, this view of selectionism, this was first proposed by Bas van Frassen, the philosopher of science, and this view was then developed by Brad Ray and others. And what this view basically says is this. If you look at science, there are some constraints in science which stop it from achieving truth, which fall short of it achieving truth. He can speak for himself.
What the hell do you think truth is?
I'm only, look, one second. I am not sharing my view, I'm sharing the view of philosophers of science. Let me explain that, you can challenge me.
It's wrong.
Look, I'm here to talk. Look, to be honest, I'm here to talk to Aron.
Yeah, well, we can all talk whenever we feel like it.
When we had our debate,
Well, I'm answering your question.
when we had our debate, your entire tactic throughout that debate was to redefine everything incorrectly.
Aaron,
so that's what you're doing now.
Aaron, I'm answering your question. Let me complete your question.
I mean, he really did. He redefined Darwinism as something that it never was.
Hang on.
He redefined evolution as something it never was.
We can go to that. Okay. So when it comes to selectionism, the reason why selectionists believe that science doesn't achieve truth, but only achieves instrumentally useful theories.
What is truth?
Well, truth is, well, it depends on how you define it, because there's different definitions.
Proposition that corresponds to reality.
Yes.
So that's why I say truth is what the facts are.
That's like fact. One second.
Exactly.
Facts are a little bit different.
So he's supporting my position that the truth is what the facts are.
You asked a question, let me answer
So science can achieve facts, right? Thus, truth.
Aaron, listen for a second. I'm answering your question you asked me, and you keep interrupting. I didn't interrupt you. So here's the thing. You asked about why I believe selectionism. Here's why I believe in selectionism. The problem of unconceived alternatives. Science works by having a web of theories which fit in, and those web of theories, they have unconceived alternatives, unconceived theories, unconceived observations, unconceived predictions. So, because of this reason, what science gives us is not truth, but gives us...
Except that the truth is what the facts are, as we've just established.
Correspondence theory is truth. 1 second.
So we can verify things that are true.
I'm just about to finish. Okay? So, the view I subscribe to is a view in the philosophy of science known as selectionism, and that view basically says we are going to be agnostic about unobservables. Now, if you're attacking me, you need to attack the philosophers of science and write papers against them. You can't just
I don't need to do that, because we've already established the truth is what the facts are. Science can achieve things that are true. Science can determine what is true.
I don't think you listened to anything I said.
What?
I don't think you listened to anything I said.
I wish I had, but I have.
Okay, so tell me this.
All I would add in.
Aaron, you make popular YouTube videos, you've got millions of hits, and you don't know the basics about instrumentalism, realism, constructive empiricism, selectionism, constraints.
Those are philosophical. I'm not interested in philosophy.
So if you're not interested in philosophy, why are you talking about metaphysics? Why are you talking about the existence of
Because
God?
he said he had evidence, and I specified scientific evidence.
By the way, listen. Here's the thing. If you understood the philosophy of science, you wouldn't be making
if you're debating about God, you have to bring in metaphysics.
And all I'm saying is
so if he's saying that, but that
all I'm
doesn't
saying
support
is
God, you're doing, that's a metaphysical statement.
Is that you are wrong, still, as always.
It's not part of the universe, right?
No, but metaphysics is
Because you're
talking
trying.
about ultimate reality.
You said that science doesn't achieve truth.
So if you're saying something doesn't correspond to reality, that's a
challenge the philosophers of science.
he's saying that God does not
Okay,
correspond
but
with reality.
we established the truth is what the facts are, right? I had all that we needed to understand. All we had to understand was what you mean by truth. Since these guys say truth is what conforms to reality, the truth is what the facts are, then your statement is wrong. Using that definition, they agree on.
Selectionism is wrong?
You then have to bring in certain...
No, I don't know anything about selectionism because of philosophy. It may be right. I may be of the same position that you are because the way you describe it sounds like what I subscribe to as well.
But you believe in scientific... It sounds like you believe in scientific realism.
No, that's fine.
Why? Because I would have thought that I believed in empiricism.
No. Okay, Aaron, this is getting really silly. Right? Empiricism, scientific realism, two
I think
different
it was silly
categories.
as soon as you got here.
No. It's two different categories, right? They're both empiricism.
Okay.
For you to think scientific realism is something different to scientific
What were your two
empiricism,
options?
it's two different things.
Give your descriptions again.
Okay. Scientific realism, scientific instrumentalism.
And what are they?
Okay. Scientific realism is we believe in claims about observables that scientists make, and we believe in claims which are made about unobservable entities, structures, and processes.
Can you give me an example?
Okay. So, for example, who would be a good?
Give me the other one.
Wait, no, hang on.
Because I don't think that's mine.
No.
Give me the other.
Okay. So, when it comes to general relativity says time and space is flexible, And it also makes other sort of claims, and you have claims, for example, in quantum mechanics about the Copernican interpretation and disinterpretation of many worlds. One. So a scientific realist would say, when scientists are talking about the unobservables, entities, structures, and processes, they are talking about actual things. Right? So that's realism. The second view is scientific.
If there are people who think that we're talking about God is not real.
No. I'm talking about scientific realism and scientific instrumentalism. Okay. Now tell me whether you agree with scientific instrumentalism. Scientific instrumentalism says this: we believe in claims that scientists make about observable entities.
I don't like the term "believe in" either case, but go ahead.
I'm just giving you philosophical definitions.
Okay. Yeah, I don't like those.
Okay. I know you clearly. So claims about unobservables, entities, processes, and structures, we are going to be agnostic about them. We're not going to say they are true. We're not going to say they are false. We're just going to remain agnostic about them. Now, I've given you two divergent views, and there's some views in the middle, right? Now, which ones do you subscribe
The instrumentalists.
to? Instrumentalism.
Yeah.
Now, if you believe in instrumentalism, what you're
I don't believe in.
Okay.
Can we not use that
subscribe
word?
to?
Do you subscribe to it?
I think that more here's that seems to concord better.
Then that basically means when scientists are speaking about natural selection being a creative force for the
We
generation.
changed the subject again.
Okay, fine. Forget even. Look,
He said he had evidence of God.
Wait, hang on.
I specified I was talking about scientific evidence, and I asked him for that.
I'm not changing the topic. Give me a second. When scientists are talking about unobservable entities, processes, and structures, they are not saying something which is true. They are saying something which it might be true or might be false. They're agnostic about it. So if you're a scientific instrumentalist, that means Darwinian evolution, which you support.
And what do you think Darwinian evolution?
Wait, hang on.
Because this is where it gets funny. I'm serious.
Hang on. Wait. That basically means you don't believe it to be true if you're an instrumentalist. So that basically means this whole time.
But Darwinian evolution is not what he says it is. Or it's not what he's got a different definition.
You know what you just did? I made a little hole, you walked into it.
No, I didn't.
You just admitted you're a scientific instrumentalist.
If you want to call that admission.
You did say that. You did say that.
Right.
That means you believe science doesn't give you truth, but gives you instrumentally useful theories.
Oh no, but it can show what is true.
Don't deny that. What?
Okay.
That means that your claims about science gives you truth is false.
As I said to him earlier, that you can't prove a hypothesis to be true, you can't prove a hypothesis to be true, but you can prove it false.
That's not true.
Yes, it is true.
One second, Aaron, let me explain. You're referring to Popper's falsificationism, which scientists have moved away from. They've actually moved away from that. You're like 40 years out of date.
Except that they're still teaching.
Because philosophers of science have moved on to scientific holism now.
Scientific holdism?
Is this every scientist? Is this a consensus you must subscribe to?
Listen, you're not important. He is. Let me speak to him.
Oh well, man, you just.
You're just the guy who owns the cameras and stuff.
He's trying to help you. He's trying to help you. You're not going to get help today.
You don't know what my perspective is,
man.
You want to learn?
Okay.
What's the issue, man? What's the problem?
So he said he had evidence of God. We are talking scientific.
Are you not going to acknowledge the fact that you just fell in a hole?
No. You can't show me that I fell into a hole.
Because you just agree to scientific instrumentalism.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
And that basically means you don't believe science gives you truth but instrumentally useful theories.
Okay, even if that's the case.
That is the case.
Even if that's the case, it has no relevance to our discussion. It has no relevance to our discussion.
It does.
How?
It does. Because what you believe in is science can give you truth. And I just took you all the way around to showing you that you just contradicted yourself.
Okay, so call it a contradiction then. How is it relevant to our discussion?
Well, how it's relevant is from a contradiction, anything follows. So since you contradict yourself and you're happy with having a worldview which has contradiction, you can make any claim.
Okay. I don't know what you mean by truth.
By the way, that's a principle in philosophy.
We were talking about...
From a contradiction, anything follows.
Again, we were talking about truth being what the facts are, what we can show to be true, right?
Yeah, and the conversation moved on to science and the philosophy of science, which you dismissed.
Right.
And I showed that you accepted scientific instrumentalism, which, by the way, you need to delete all of your YouTube videos about Darwinian evolution being true.
Right.
Should probably
have fun with your word salad.
Okay,
but that's still not relevant to what we were talking about.
Of course it is. Because
Of course it
look,
isn't.
The reason why I came in is, look, I didn't even know this guy, right? But what I do know about him
You
is
don't know
this.
me either, by the way, mate.
I don't
And
really
you're making assumptions
Yeah.
about what I
Look,
think
look,
in a
look,
rather rude
Hey,
way.
I'm out of here because
You're
I'm
outta
not
here.
playing philosophical word
Cool, man.
salad.
Well, I had a
That's-
good discussion with you anyway.
Thank you.
You know.
I thought we did.
Yeah.
I thought we did for a
Josh,
bit.
your point.
seems
I
to go
came
to
in.
Vermont, doesn't it?
Aaron, what's going on?
What's going on? I'm not playing philosophical word salad.
Can we finish our conversation?
Am I
please?
running?
You got you in America, now he's being.
It seems I'm not allowed to. I'm not important enough
I
to have a
handed him his
discussion on
ass,
COE.
and he redefined
Because of this guy.
He destroyed you in America.
I had to wonder. I want to talk about that. Because I saw that you uploaded. You uploaded that video of our debate as if you'd done well.
He did.
I was stunned. You sucked ass. You redefined everything wrong. Tell him what is Darwinism? Is Darwinian evolution a fact? That was our
I'm not
debate.
important enough to talk.
So
Okay.
let's hear his definition of a fact, and let's hear his definition of Darwinian evolution, because his definition are his own definitions.
Can we go back
They
to
are
our-
not the
can we go back
definitions
to our
of science.
All right.
So he redefined everything wrong,
Come on, Mr.
and I proved that.
I don't think you did.
Watch the damn debate.
I did.
I
watched
did
it. I
prove
watched
it.
it twice.
Can we get back to
You
the...
pay attention this time.
Can we go back to the...
Yeah, respond. What is Darwinian evolution?
Okay. So your question is, what is Darwinian evolution? What is a fact?
Yep.
Okay. Now, I didn't interrupt you when you.
Hold on. What is a fact?
I would say a proposition that corresponds to reality.
I don't like proposition. I would like.
Aaron, can I respond?
To the evidence.
So you just
He's not going to help you. He's not going to help you. He's definitely not going to help you. Right? Let me speak to you. So you're saying the fact. What is a fact?
What is a fact?
Now,
Yes. Now, are we talking in science?
Aaron, I'm not going to interrupt you.
Are we talking in science?
Can you let me speak?
Seems there's a lot of ego at play here,
Are
isn't
we talking about science?
it? Seems that we're not interested in actual discussion, isn't it?
So he's not going to answer. Okay.
When we're speaking about fact, the first thing which I want to speak about is what philosophers define fact as, and then we're going to get to science. Okay? So, one of the first problems in the philosophy of science, in fact, there's a paper which is called "Is the First Problem in Philosophy What is a Fact?" That they basically claim it is, and there's a whole bunch of different definitions. However, there is a generally agreed upon definition in science. Now, my first video, which you responded to, which I made on Darwin Day, around that period, right, in 2016, I basically said right at the beginning, Darwinian evolution, if it's defined as a fact from a philosophy point of view, that fact is something which you can define as absolute, doesn't change, and cannot be changed because of future observations, then it's not a fact. However, in the same video, I said if you say a fact is a generally prevailing theory in science, is a theory which is described by the majority, or it is a valid...
both of which are wrong.
Hang on, one
So
second.
both of which are wrong.
One second, Aaron.
So that first definition of fact, I don't agree with you at that point.
Okay, I'll explain why.
Okay.
But the second one is wrong too.
I don't know about the second one. I'm saying philosophically. I don't think that
Second
first
one
one
again.
was
Why I
correct.
said it was this. Look, too many things going on. Let me just explain. In philosophy, there is a massive discussion about what is a fact. So therefore, whenever you speak about a fact, you need to define what you're speaking about. So in that paper, which is published by Cambridge University, it speaks about what is a fact. And what it goes on to say is this. Whenever you speak about a fact in a particular context, you need to define it clearly, then speak about it in a different context. In fact, may mean something else. So in the beginning of my video, I said this is the way I am defining a fact for the purposes of this discussion. And
What
I
is
said,
that definition?
Yeah.
And that's the definition I used. Which I'm allowed to use.
What is it?
Which I said was something absolute, something that's not going to change, and something that can't be revised.
Oh, that's not a fact.
No.
I mean, in
Hang on.
metaphysics.
I don't.
No, but
In philosophy,
No. In
I-
metaphysics, that is not a definition
Yes,
of fact.
and that's why I
So a
said.
definition of fact is either what I said, a proposition that corresponds to reality, or an obtaining state of affairs. That is not
Okay,
how
look,
they define
I
fact.
don't think you're clear on what I'm trying to say.
When do you hear how he defines Darwinian evolution?
No, but I'm just saying, I agree with you in a lot you're saying, but I'm saying fact is not defined in metaphysics in that way.
What I'm saying is this. In that paper it
fact can
says,
change, yes.
that paper it says, fact can be defined in many different ways. So therefore, in a context when you're speaking, you need to specify what you're speaking about. Do you understand? So for the purposes of that discussion, I used it in that way. I could use the word truth, I could use a different term. For the purposes of that discussion, it doesn't mean that in philosophy, there's only one definition, because according to the paper which I just referenced, there is no one definition. That's what you're saying. Okay?
So-
now, the definition of Darwinian evolution, what is the definition? Now, Darwinian evolution can be defined by many, whether you look at pre-modern synthesis or post-modern synthesis, or later on the extended.
You're still
synthesis.
repeating the same errors.
Wait, hang on. Listen.
He doesn't learn.
Aaron, let me complete. So whenever you speak about Darwinian evolution, you need to define
Why not just
what
call
you
it
mean.
evolution? Why are you specifying Darwinian evolution? What's the difference?
Philosopher Jerry Fodor, who's a philosopher of science, philosopher of biology, he defines it in this particular way. He says Darwinian evolution has two twin theses. It has a phylogenetic history, the tree of life, and natural selection being the primary mechanism to drive that evolutionary change.
That's wrong too. The primary mechanism
so Jerry Fodor's wrong?
Yeah.
So philosopher of science is wrong?
The primary mechanism is genetic drift. That is primary.
The primary...
Yeah, that's the primary.
I'm shocked you're saying this.
No,
And you're
not surprised.
drunk or something?
So all you're going to do
You're
is
telling
insult
me did Darwin write about
Notice-
genetic drift?
Darwin didn't know about genetic
Exactly.
drift.
So Darwin's main idea
So
was
Darwinian
natural
evolution.
selection.
So Darwinian evolution refers only to what Darwin himself proposed, right? The Darwinian mechanisms, natural and sexual selection.
Aaron,
So that
you're really embarrassing yourself.
no, I'm not.
You're
Darwinian.
saying the primary driver of evolution is genetic drift.
Yes.
Okay. Do you know what I want you to do? I want you to go down the road to the Royal Society. You've just discovered something amazing because according to them, they believe Darwin was right. Natural selection is the primary driving force. Of course, some of them disagree.
Darwin was right, and in his time, he didn't know about genetic drift.
Aaron, you're saying genetic drift is the primary factor?
Yes. Yes.
You need to write a paper, and you need to
I don't need to write another paper.
You just made two. No one's talking to you. You just made.
Is it necessary to be so rude, mate?
Yeah,
I can sabotage the conversation as well, mate, if I feel like it. I can. Because you're being rude to everybody around here, and that's not the nature of it. So, you're not
interrupting me.
Oh, really?
So what he did
in
in our debate,
I'll sabotage the convo if you want, mate.
You can
I'm
help
not
him.
that
But
impressed.
he's looking desperate right now.
Because I'm really calm and I really want to have good discussions, man.
I know. And I know you're
You're wearing sunglasses on a sunny day, on a cloudy day.
I'm not supporting everything he's saying either.
So what he did was to redefine Darwinian evolution
According to our philosophers say.
into macroevolution.
No?
And what was the word you used for microevolution? Because you didn't use microevolution,
I don't even know if you saw
obviously.
that.
I think he just used evolution for that, and then Darwinian evolution became the macroevolution argument. So Darwinian evolution was known to be the things that Darwin himself postulated, which was natural and sexual selection
Wait, hang on.
in the
You just contradicted
1800s.
yourself.
And no, I didn't. I
You
did
just said
not.
natural and sexual selection, and before you said the primary force is genetic drift.
That's correct. Both statements are indeed
Again,
correct.
do you know how you're being consistent? By
Yes.
being inconsistent.
I'm
First you were
not being
inconsistent
inconsistent.
about instrumentalism and realism, and now you're inconsistent about natural selection being the
Which is
primary
it,
force.
genetic drift or, because I'm a bit confused, because when you said...
Darwin didn't know about genetic drift. He knew that natural selection acted on differences. He didn't know the source of the differences. It turns out the source of the differences is genetic drift, and that is actually the primary, because you can have quite a lot of evolution without any natural selection or sexual selection even being involved. That's what makes it primary.
So is it natural selection? Which one is primary? Are they both primary?
Tell me this, right? If what you're saying is right, why
And it
is it
is.
that the scientific and the philosophy of biology literature doesn't reflect that?
You're going to assert that it doesn't, and you have asserted that it doesn't. And all you've
I'll
done.
give you evidence that it doesn't. I'll give you evidence that it doesn't. Michael Roos is a philosopher of science. He's an atheist, so yeah, he has no.
We have another citation. Some famous philosopher, some famous somebody says something
So what
that's
do you want?
against
You want me to quote
I'm
Muhammed Hijab?
explaining it directly, and I'm not having to cite anybody else.
But you should cite someone who's that's the natural science, right?
Well, then let's do this online, where I can look up everybody's name.
Okay,
and just
so why do you give us? Why do you give it?
Otherwise, I'm giving the evidence
Aaron,
directly, and I'm explaining how it works.
Aaron, why do you give us evidence that genetic drift? Give us a citation. Genetic drift is the primary force.
Why do I have to give a citation? We're talking directly. I'm explaining it. I'm explaining it to him.
So give me evidence for that.
I just did.
What's
So
the evidence? You said so.
Your words.
do you accept that humans have an average of 128 mutations per zygote? What?
They could do.
They could do. Okay, so you accept that. So I mean, this type of variance occurs in all organisms, right? And this is the source of genetic drift, right? You understand that if you put a
It's
population...
not the source of genetic drift. Genetic drift is a force.
Okay,
conflating
and the
terms.
source of that variance is...
Okay, no, Aaron, what you're doing is you're making, again, another conflation, right?
All right.
Let me explain what you're doing. Natural selection is the force. One second, Aaron. Random mutations is the fodder, which is the Play-Doh which natural selection shapes. Genetic drift is not a primary force. It is a secondary or tertiary force within the paradigm of Darwinian evolution. So you have genetic drift.
In every organism.
Wait, hang on. You have genetic drift. You have natural selection being the primary thing.
Nope.
You also have niche construction. You also have.
We don't have natural selection as a primary thing for the reason that I already
is the
explained.
primary thing.
That's what Darwin thought, and he was right that natural selection is a thing. But later it was determined that.
Okay, have you heard of Francis Crick?
Yes, of course.
Okay, do you think Francis Crick knew what he was talking about? You know what you're talking about.
I did just explain how this works, and
Okay,
so you should
Francis
understand.
Crick, here's what he said.
He's got to quote somebody again.
Okay, but you don't give any scientific evidence.
I do, and we're in.
And you know what? Francis
I
Crick.
explain the science to you.
Hang on.
It doesn't do any good to cite papers if you haven't read them.
You don't like the philosophy of science, so how can you explain the science? Francis Crick, here's what he said about the blind watchmaker. Richard Dawkins wrote The Blind Watchmaker to explain the power of natural selection, not genetic drift. Natural selection being the primary force.
But you understand.
And one second, Francis Crick said, if you doubt the power of natural selection to be the driving force in evolution, then read The Blind Watchmaker. Right? So you're challenging me. You know Dawkins. Why don't you write to him and say he's wrong?
Do you understand that every organism has this variance, right? Genetic variance, these mutations, that these are the source
No
of
one
human
disagrees
variance.
with that. I don't think the tree disagrees with that.
Okay, I don't care about the tree. So you understand that any population of organisms, you're going to have this kind of diversity, right? And without natural selection even being involved, or sexual selection either, neither of the Darwinian mechanisms, neither one of them are necessary. You're still going to have evolution. Natural selection...
You're making a different claim. The
I'm
earlier
saying
claim you made was it's
genetic
not the
drift
primary
still
force.
applies, right? Because genetic drift still applies whether there's natural selection or sexual selection. So you don't need either of the Darwinian mechanisms to achieve evolution. That's true. And it doesn't matter what somebody said somewhere. That's true, and we can all understand that, right?
Okay, Aaron, here's the thing. Yeah? If you're going to make claims like this, at least give.
Are you going to disagree with what I just
disagree
said?
with that. And I
You
give
totally
evidence for
disagree that if you put a population of any organism,
I totally disagree that it's the primary force.
but if that force, is it a force now, or we agree to use the word force? If we're going to allow that genetic drift,
What do you call it?
it doesn't really matter.
The effect.
So I'm not
Whatever,
going to
the
correct him,
effect
I'm
of
saying
genetic drift.
not like he's doing me. So if you allow a herd of sheep out here, right, and you're going to have variation within those sheep, eventually we could even have a form of speciation without any natural selection or sexual selection necessary. So that makes genetic drift the basis, because that operates when the others even don't exist.
Okay, so now you're saying something different. Before you said it's not the primary force. Now you're saying, assuming natural selection is not there, evolution will still take place. These are two different claims.
Are you not? How do you not understand anything I just said?
No, I did understand clearly exactly what you
Obviously not.
So
You didn't understand anything I said.
You need to listen to me, because I'm not sure if you really understand what's going on.
All right, he's just going to insult me some more.
Guys, maybe
It's been a staple of this conversation since our friends in
Does seem to be.
Can we direct it?
Aaron,
Because we weren't.
Aaron, if you're going to make claims, I'm going to challenge them. You can't accept me. You can't expect me not to challenge them.
You're going to deny that evolution is going to happen with just genetic drift. You deny that.
No, I totally agree with that.
Well, then, what are you saying that you disagree with me about?
Maybe we
What I'm
agree.
saying
That
is,
was the one claim I was making.
no, the claim you were making was it's the primary
Right,
force.
because it exists,
Genetic
and that
drift.
operates even without the other.
Hang on.
The others
And
need. No, understand this. Without genetic drift, you don't have anything for natural selection to act upon. That makes genetic drift primary.
No, you're actually speaking about the random mutations, not genetic drift.
But where do you think the genetic drift comes from? Is from the random mutations. That's
Random
why I
mutations.
started.
Yes, but you're making a category mistake again. Aaron,
Am I making a category mistake?
I like our discussion about the existence of God. I mean, can we?
This is not going to get any better.
Can we draw back to that?
Aaron, it's because you don't understand philosophy of science.
No, I'm saying, can we draw to like the existence of God? I mean, that was. I mean, we're just.
Question in the beginning, what you were saying, I wanted to actually, because I'll be honest with you, this is very technical for a lot of us, right?
Okay.
And so I want to bring it back to a point that you made, which maybe a lot of us can relate with, which is the question of, because I saw your debate with Subboor, and it was a lot of semantics, like the question of what is a fact. Now, for the purpose of
did you see when I did the debate, when I showed what the actual definitions are and how he was misusing them?
I don't think he was misusing.
I can prove that he was, and in fact, I did prove that he was.
Aaron, I just wanted to ask a question. My question was, now, when in the vernacular, in the common vernacular, right? When we say the word fact, what we mean is an kind of incorrigible truth, right? Now,
a point of data that can be objectively verified.
No, not that.
Okay.
I'm saying because verificationism is another issue.
What else is truth then?
No, because that's we're presupposing with that verificationism. I'm not presupposing that.
I'm not going on verificationism. I was saying.
So truth.
It's not a fact just because you say so. It's only a fact.
Aaron, let me ask you a question. Putting the word fact away, because I know it's a controversial word in the terminology.
It shouldn't be.
No, I know it's because we're getting confused as to in what context philosophy of science, in science, what. So
let's consider it's a point of data that is either not in dispute or is indisputable and then it can be.
Let's divorce the word fact from the dictionary. Let's use the word true.
So,
do you believe Darwinian evolution is true?
Like absolutely true, incorrigible.
No, true. Do you believe it's true? It corresponds to reality.
Truth has a different implication than mere fact.
Okay, fine. So, but do you believe it's true?
The Darwinian evolution. What is Darwinian evolution? I would define it as the mechanisms that Darwin came up with in the 1800s. You define it differently than any scientist.
No, that's not
true.
Yeah,
that is
let's
true.
go with Aaron's definition.
Go with your definition. Is it true?
Is it true in that way?
That depends on what he means by Darwinian.
No.
Your definition.
Okay, mine wouldn't be Darwinian.
What would it be?
Mine would just be evolution. So he mentions neo-Darwinism and the modern synthesis. I wouldn't.
Do you know Darwinism is an academic term?
Yes, and I know that it's only popular here. In the United States, our scientists there don't use that.
So therefore it can't be true. If it's defined two different ways and one place is true, one place is not true.
Because Darwinism is used in the United States to conflate with a religious belief.
Oh, by the way, you know that claim you kept making that it's not true in the United States? We don't use the term Darwinism. Totally false, because Jerry Fodor is an American philosopher of science.
But Subboor, I wanted to come back to this point because this question.
And plus, by the way, what you're trying to say is academia, because we have this massive sea across us, the UK and the USA, we somehow lose an academic term. That's total nonsense.
I was explaining that the reason that most of our scientists have stopped using Darwinism is because it's conflated with religious. It's because it is, and I have citations.
Can you give me the name of one American scientist who believes in biological evolution but doesn't accept the term Darwinism?
I can name several.
One.
Okay. What the? Not plate. God, don't you hate it when the name you need is right on the top of your head? Fuck. Paleontologist, University of California. I can't remember.
And you're saying he does not accept the term Darwinism?
Right.
And you're willing to
Well, he understands. He doesn't use the term Darwin. It's not that he doesn't accept it.
So he doesn't use it?
The reason that we don't in the United States is because it is being used to conflate with religious belief. So they treat Darwinism as if it is a religion. So in the United States, where this tendency is common, we stray away from that word. Just like we don't want to say that we believe that evolution is true, because believe also has been taken to mean make-believe. So we have to say we think Darwinism is true.
This scientist, let's just call him Mr. Gray.
You can name
Mr. Gray. Hang on. All right, Mr. Gray and his caravan full of other scientists. You're telling me if they came here to Speaker's Corner, they wouldn't accept Darwinism as an academic term?
They wouldn't use the word Darwin.
No. Would they accept that it exists?
Well, they would accept that it exists, yes.
That's all my point is. That's all my point is.
I don't think you had a point.
Just going back to the point, because for me, no, because what I wanted to, which side? Oh, sorry.
So, what I would describe as evolution right? Which he divided macroevolution and macroevolution.
I didn't make those definitions. If you remember, I said I don't believe in those.
I
He's allowed to participate.
He redefined
Why didn't you
that,
ask
so
your
he put
friend
them
why
in
you're
different
allowed to
And do
categories.
you know evolution was used before Darwin?
No.
And I did mention
Yes,
Why you ask your friend why you're allowed to participate and I'm
Yes,
not?
I understand that too. Irrelevant though that interjection
You're-
was.
no.
So what he did is he
No, I'm talking about
redefined
your
so
mate.
that the macroevolution category became the Darwinian evolution.
Yeah, I never heard him do that today.
I didn't do that.
Yeah, not today, in our debate. You said you saw it
Even
twice.
in the debate, one thing I made clear is I'm speaking about the academic definition of
You have
Darwinism.
to define terms.
The academic definition.
Okay, show
Because
me.
in one of your own videos, you spoke about Lamarckian evolution.
We've
Right?
gone down a rabbit
Yep.
hole.
You did.
Yeah.
So Lamarckian
really.
evolution is
It's just
different to
egos.
Darwinian
No,
evolution,
but
is it
I've
not?
never seen.
So why am I wrong for
Arguing
using
about
the
each
term Darwinian
individual
evolution?
word so that you can get one up on
I
it.
said
That's all it is.
that we tend not to use it in the United States
time,
for
man.
the reasons that I gave.
Okay, so
And
do
that
this.
you then,
Okay.
and that you then chose Darwinian evolution to mean not what Darwin proposed as opposed to Lamarck, and not what Darwin and not the what Darwin's mechanisms were. You used Darwinian evolution as a replacement for macroevolution.
No, I didn't.
Because you said the phylogeny.
I didn't. Look,
So you divided the process from the phylogeny. So you wanted to create an illusion
Okay.
that there's two
Okay.
different
Okay.
things,
Okay.
which is basically the division between microevolution and
No,
macroevolution.
it's not. So look, when I gave the definition of Jerry Fodor, he said that there are twin ideas within Darwinism. One is the tree of life, one is natural selection as the driving mechanism. That's the definition I used.
To divide microevolution and macroevolution.
Not micro and macro, because Aaron, you
Because
can
went
have...
Darwinian evolution, you gave a different definition.
Aaron, look, let me ask you this question, so I don't think you're getting this. If we ignore the tree of life and replace it with the web of life, you can still have macroevolution. So it's irrelevant the tree of life is there, or the web of life is there, or the hedge of life is there.
What is macroevolution?
Well, it can be defined in many different ways.
It can be defined one way,
No.
the way.
No,
and I can prove the way.
Okay.
But what do you think?
Let him define it.
Wait. If you go by one of the basic definitions of species, right? So if you say biological isolation, so there's biological isolation between this species and this species. Now going back in their history, both of these species actually, which are geographically isolated, they can't reproduce. They go back to a common ancestor. That would be macroevolution.
The correct definition is that microevolution is variation within a species, that being the varieties within breeds.
You say macro or macro?
Micro is variation within a species, that's within a breeding population, so subspecies classifications or breeds. Macroevolution is variation between species.
That's what I just said.
At or above the species level.
That's what I
Is
just
that
said.
what you
So
said? Is that what you said?
He tried to go convoluted and
No, but
backwards.
that is what he said. That's
That is
why I
what I said.
understood.
Okay, so he wants... Okay.
But you being a scientific instrumentalist, you wouldn't agree with the phylogeny anyway.
So here we're a
Because
point
you
of
believe in-
agreement.
But remember, a scientific instrumentalist, which you subscribe to, would say unobservable entity structures and processes are not speaking about truth. We have to be agnostic about them. So you're going to be agnostic about the tree anyway. So that means your phylogeny
I'm kind of
probably need to
agnostic
throw-
about
throw-
everything,
Sorry?
but I think I'm kind of agnostic about everything. But I mean, we can verify.
No, I'm talking
we don't
about
ever talk about
scientific
absolute proof. We don't prove anything absolutely. But we
Really?
have.
Very beginning.
Yeah.
We don't
Right
prove
at the
anything
very
absolutely. Do you want me to bring up your video title, Aaron? Do you want me to embarrass you right now?
What is it?
Is it about egos or is it about
No, but Aaron,
actually having a good
so-
discussion, man?
That's important for me because once again, a lot of the laity will not
It's about
understand
egos,
a
man.
lot of the terms. So
Saying
I
he
need
wants
to
to
bring it back
embarrass
to
you. It's not
like
interested
a
in
more
truth.
generic kind of discussion.
Wait, what did the guy just say? Yeah, we don't know anything for true. Evolution is absolutely a fact. There
is.
you go.
That is
there
true.
you go.
You just contradicted
Third
yourself.
contradiction.
No, but
Did you
Aaron,
get that,
so
sir?
I'm a bit confused because
You got it, yeah?
the question is, I want to understand your position.
Understanding that a fact is a point of
I don't
data
think
that is
you do, but
objectively
I don't-
You're being
verifiable.
very rude, man.
Evolution has been objectively verified.
I'm
And
sorry.
I
Okay,
showed in the debate that you saw the National Academy of Science declaring evolution to be a fact.
Right.
I'm
Done.
talking to him. Can you?
One.
Look, you're complaining about
Oh, I get what you're saying. Yeah.
I know what a fact is.
Yeah, no, but do you think it's true.
It's objectively verifiable. So that means true.
So you
I've
believe
got a
it's
history
true.
with
No,
him.
but
and
his-
I'll be
I
back.
can prove that it's true. Yes.
Okay,
sorry.
I'm wrong. I'm wrong, and I'm sorry.
I understand
But you interrupt me when I'm speaking
what
to
you
him,
said
and I
now.
got
I
upset.
understand.
That's
I'm
wrong.
getting your position.
I apologize.
Subboor,
We don't
I
need to
understand
get
his
heated.
position
No, I
now.
agree. I'm wrong about that.
He's not
Okay, can we talk about that afterwards?
No.
Because it's not. We can talk. We can have food together if you want. Man.
No.
Yeah.
I was wrong because I was rude to him.
Look.
I've got beef with him, not with you.
Aaron.
Okay.
What I was
So
gonna
I'm
say
sorry. I'm sorry. I'm
was
wrong.
that this is it.
I think it
So
would be
you-
more productive not
when
on
you
camera.
define fact,
You know what I mean? If you actually
the
have
way
good
that you define
disagreements,
it,
you should go and do
you're
that.
saying that from
But
that
it's the common
then
definition.
you can
In
call
science.
it right, no problem. But in science, so that's a terminological definition
Maybe we
within the
should- it was
field of
less
science,
like-
and you
Now,
can use
he
that.
can find somebody,
Oh,
some
yes.
philosopher of science who
Yeah,
has
yeah.
some convoluted weird thing that fact isn't a fact.
We don't make
But I'm
mistakes.
going with the National
I get
Academy
what
of
you're
Science.
saying,
I'm
right.
going standard
But
definition.
you see, I understand that because when you go into
Maybe you'll never
a terminological definition of a particular field or a subfield, sometimes what we use in the vernacular is not necessarily what you're intending. So what you're saying is, when you're saying facts, what you're not intending is an absolute incorrigible eternal truth, which is not susceptible to any kind of falsification. You're not saying that.
How it can be used.
No, it's something we can verify. Can we verify that
Yeah,
this
but
is true?
I understand, but
So
verification.
evolution, we can verify that evolution is true.
Aaron, I appreciate what you're saying, and I get your point. But what you're not saying is that evolution is true in that absolute way that we thought, that we've just
I
described.
try to
I
stay
have no-
away
I
from
have no
absolute
idea.
because people want to, like him, he wants
No
to
politics.
play word games with it.
Right. So you would agree then that evolution, whether Darwinian, Lamarckian, or whatever it is not absolutely true then.
No, there's a huge difference. Lamarckian evolution is complete bollocks.
That's not true.
No problem. But,
That is totally not true.
but
I'll tell you why.
But away
Trying
from
to
that,
misrepresent epigenetics now?
No, wait, hang on. I'll tell you why. Transformations of Lamarckism by Eva Jablonka, who's an Israeli evolutionary biologist. You need to go to her and tell her, listen, that is bollocks.
Okay, so after
Go then. They
hundreds
get a
of
flight to
generations
Israel.
of chopping tails off of mice to see if mice are going to be born without tails, it never worked because acquired characteristics doesn't happen.
That's not only in Lamarckism, by the way. It's a lot wider than that.
Okay, but Lamarckism is
You said it was
Lamarckianism.
bollocks.
Yes. So if
So you need
were
to tell those
Lamarck
scientists.
Lamarck
And
taught.
by the way, 1 second. Go to the Royal Society and tell them when you bought those guys who believe in neo-Lamarckian evolution,
see what he's
they
trying
were
to get?
they were speaking bollocks. So you should kick them
no,
out.
but the point he's making
So
is
Lamarck,
right, so
science and you attack scientists.
Lamarck taught that the way that we evolve is if you work
the
out.
giraffe, it goes higher.
Right. If the giraffe stretches its neck, the babies are going to be born with longer neck. If you work out with weights, your babies are going to be
gonna be
born
like that,
stronger. We know that is complete bollocks. No scientist disagrees with that. Sorry, they don't.
Okay, so wait, hang on. Okay.
I would like to step out because my wife called me an hour ago,
These guys
and I've
seal
been
up.
hung at just getting assaulted.
Let's wrap up this discussion
So,
because
go back
maybe
to
we
watch the
can
debate.
talk
He
to
defined
about.
it wrong on purpose because it wasn't
I've
semantic
heard him
argument,
quote.
and that's how I won.
As a layperson, I've heard him quote several sources. I can watch his back. I can
Did you
check it out.
catch-
I
did you
haven't,
catch
I
when
haven't
the
heard
girl-
you quote anyone.
Did you? Yeah, I didn't have to.
You said
I
you knew
did
several
cite.
people. You said I could cite several people. Then you went blah 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 blah. No, I can't remember. What's that guy in the
Yeah, I can. In the Hedonism, I
Okay,
can.
but you will do it on your YouTube channel.
Would you like me to prove to you?
No, I would deal with the expert. I'm not an expert here.
No hard feelings.
I think
I'm not going to
I don't know. I don't know.
I'm sorry. You are not an honest person. That's the way I read you.
So why? Because he beat you again. He beat. That's 2-0.
Excuse me.
2-0.
That's
one in America.
That's
one
still
here.
me. Okay. He
haven't
lost
proven
that
any-
debate.
You haven't proven anything. You lost in your hometown in
Did
America.
you see?
Now
You
you've
saw
lost
the
in
debate. You
Speaker's
watched
Corner.
it twice, right?
Yes.
Did you see in the halftime when the girl comes up to me to talk about how her professor was a guy he cited and that he
was
cited
one
that
on your
professor?
channel.
Yeah, so
wrong
why didn't that person
again?
contact me? And that video's got over 100,000 views.
Yeah.
Why didn't
I
the
don't know
person
why
contact-
that person
So why didn't
didn't
you
contact me,
contact
but
and try
you
to contact me?
were wrong.
And
Nonetheless.
here's his reference, the only reference he gave. A student of a professor who is unnamed.
Except that I also,
I'm a layperson.
I put up
Aaron,
the National Academy of
Aaron,
Science, right?
We do.
Excuse me.
Yeah, go on.
Did you see my citation on the screen of the National Academy of Science declaring that evolution is a fact? Right? National Academy of Science says evolution is a fact. Right. Done. Won. Me.
You won. You honestly think you won?
And,
Absolutely. Yes. He had to redefine
What does delusion
everything.
mean? Do you know what delusion means?
It's almost religion. That's That's when you refuse.
You need to go back to in between us.
Hang on.
That's when you refuse to admit
That's harsh.
that a belief that you have is wrong.
That's harsh.
So, and I appreciate that what you just said there. That final comment is okay. So, with that definition, then you could say that evolution or Darwinian evolution is susceptible to falsification of some sort.
No, we have to be very specific about it. When you say different, I don't like using the word Darwinian because if we understand that we're not talking about Lamarck, then we don't need to mention Darwinian.
Right, okay, so let's just say evolution.
Right, we're done. We've distinguished it from Lamarck.
For the sake of
So we understand there's the one and only theory of evolution.
Let's just say that.
Regardless,
no
okay.
Yeah.
So we understand that works.
Yeah.
We understand this process works.
Yes.
And there are many, myriad different ways of verifying various aspects of it.
Yeah, but do you know what? My only issue with that articulation.
I'd be happy to prove it to you.
No. My only issue with that articulation is that when you use the word verify, what comes to my mind is verificationism, right? So this is, which is one of many ways of.
Do you want to believe something that is not evidently true? Well, no. Yes, obviously you do. So never mind. That question doesn't work. I don't want to believe things that are not evidently true.
Can I ask you a question?
Because if it's not evidently true, then it's probably false. And I only want to know things that are true.
I understand what you're saying, but what I wanted to ask you was, what is your standard of truth from an epistemological perspective? So you've used the word verification.
Yeah.
The question really is, what are the acceptable standards of truth? Yeah.
All right. So you're not a Christian, right? So the Christian comes up to you here, holds up the Bible, says this is the absolute truth, right? Do you accept that?
No.
Okay. Yeah. Why is it not true?
Yeah, but the Bible.
Right.
So I would go about trying to show.
Why is anything not true?
Why is anything not true?
Yeah.
So okay, that's a good question, right? For me personally, I would say from an epistemological perspective, there are many ways of finding out the truth. One of them is intuitionism. So axiomatic realities that we are, for example, that I exist, right? So that's something that I can't really prove from a logical perspective, but I can from an axiomatic perspective, for self-evident to say that I exist. So intuition.
And Hume also argued that we have to make this assumption because it is madness if we don't.
So yeah, intuitionism is one way. I would say another one is...
So what you're saying is you're going to determine what is the truth. It's not because somebody says it's the truth. You have to find out whether it is true.
But let me finish my ways.
Okay.
Right? So I said that you can either do it, you can either intuit it. So in other words, it can be something intuitive like the existence of man. It can either be something which is logically reasoned, like for example from first principles. And I would put underneath that or next to it mathematical truths.
Okay.
Right. So I would say mathematical truths are also something which can be proven if you put things together.
One way or another, regardless of the categories.
Yeah.
You're finding there are ways to find out what is true. Right.
And I would argue that you can do that.
The important point there
is
that you don't call it truth if you can't show that it's true.
Absolutely.
Would it be dishonest to claim something as a truth that's not?
Yes.
Right. So that's where I draw the line. I may believe something very strongly, but I won't say it's the truth unless I can show that it's true.
Right.
Because I think it's dishonest to do otherwise.
I'll be honest with you, Aaron. I believe that our conception, because I know that you might. Sorry, I apologize. Can I stand there? All right. Sorry, I apologize. I understand that you might.
And I'm going to have to go quick. But
yeah, I will make this very quick. So I understand, Aaron, that you might have encountered a lot of Christian fundamentalists and things like that. I want to say from an Islamic perspective, our conception of God, Allah, that you've got in your shirt, right, is completely different from that of the Christian God, right? In that it's not triune, it's not Jesus being, God or the Son of God and so on. So what I would say is that, bearing that in mind, and bearing in mind that our understanding of God is an incorporeal, immaterial, one necessary being, it's independent. I would say that can be proved from first principles, Aaron. And I can prove that to you right now.
That you can prove God exists?
Yeah, from first principles. And I'm not saying God exists in the vernacular, once again, thinking about...
Okay, and yet there are all these eminent philosophers who are atheists. How is that possible?
No, it's possible that people can believe in false beliefs, right?
Yeah.
Just because people believe in atheism.
It's definitely possible people... I'm talking to a Muslim. Yeah, of course it's possible.
Well, anyone can make a claim. You have to ascertain.
By the way, I want to invite you to something, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
I do a semi-regular video series where I read a few surahs of the Quran. I write a blog post of my impression of them. I'm only a third of the way into the book, right? And then I have a video hangout with a number of, up to this point, they've been mostly ex-Muslims. I had one believer. and they correct me on what I got wrong, because I don't know anything about the hadiths. I read the tafsirs as much as I can to try to get,
No, I'm happy to assist with that.
All right.
Yeah, and I'll give you my number before you leave. But
Well, I'm about to leave. So.
No. Just I want to say one thing, and then you can kind of challenge it if you want. What I was going to say is, do you agree that there are contingent things in existence, things that depend upon other things for their existence, and things which could be arranged in any other way?
No, I'm not sure of that.
For example, right, you're wearing a t-shirt. The t-shirt that you're wearing it depends on some kind of material, and it could be rearranged in any other. It could be blue, it could have been green or yellow.
Okay.
Right, so those things are in existence. Contingent things, possible things are in existence.
Contingent possible things are in existence.
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
If it's possible,
now
here's
my postulation. My only postulation today. My postulation is that it's impossible for there to be a world where there are only possible things in existence. And I'll tell you why, how I reason that. I reason that.
Well, I disagree with you there,
Josh, we can talk about it afterwards.
No, but I want to hear your reasoning for this.
Well, we don't have to agree or disagree. Look,
I want to hear your reasoning.
You already believe in a God, right?
I do, but I don't think that argument's
I bet
good.
he's not going to convince you.
You don't have to believe it's good.
Yes.
I'm speaking to Aron, if you don't mind. So what I was going to say was, the reason why only possible things cannot be in existence is because you have the absurdity of dependent things depending upon dependent things ad infinitum. And so you have compounding dependency. In other words, there's no necessary reason for anything to come into existence in particular. So in other words, my postulation is as follows. My postulation is that there must be a necessary being through which all other dependent things, all other contingent things, depend on in order for there to be any existence in the first place. Now, here's my question to you.
If you say there must be a necessary, that's a tautology, that's necessary, right? There must be. But you haven't shown why there must be. And you also said there can't be a world where there are only possible things.
I'll tell you why.
That's implying that there's a world where there are impossible things. Which obviously is impossible.
Not. So, okay, you've got three categories, right? Absolutely right. You've got impossible things like a squared circle which cannot be in existence. We agree with that, right? Me and you agree. A squared circle cannot exist in the real world. Then you have things which are contingent, things which are possible, things which could have otherwise been differently, or which, if you take out of creation, the creation doesn't collapse. These things are dependent things, they're contingent things, right? Then you have, and this is what my postulation is, you must have a necessary being that puts all other contingent things into existence and through which it can depend on. Otherwise, you have the absurdity of dependent things depending upon dependent things ad infinitum. Now, what I'm saying is, as simple as this, right? From my perspective, I could not imagine, it's not possible. I would say it's logically unfeasible from a epistemological perspective for there to be a world with only dependent things. Can you explain how there could be a world with only dependent things? And first of all, that's first question.
I don't see it as that. I mean, even when we have the symbiosis, there's an evolution to get there. So it doesn't always start out that way.
Right. So what I'm saying is, no problem. So would you agree with me that there's a necessary existence that puts all other possible things into existence?
No.
Why not?
Because there's no indication of it.
No, there is
possibility.
Do you know what the indication of that is?
What?
Do you know what the indication of that is? And let me tell you what the indication.
Obviously not.
Right. So say, for example, let me put this in mathematical terms. Say you have a series.
You're not going to help if you go there.
No, you don't know, right? So you say you have a series, and in that series you have possible things in that series. Possible one, possible two, possible. We'll call it dependent thing, contingent thing, whatever you want to call it.
Does this argument work on you?
Excuse me, are you talking about the mathematical object of a series?
Yes.
Because I've just studied this.
What is this, sorry?
A series is what? Okay, why are you saying there are possible objects in a series? There either is or there isn't.
No, let me explain to you. I'm using a cosmological example, right? Which is an example which makes reference to the universe, but putting it in a mathematical term. I'm not saying, right?
Right, I study physics. That's exactly what I want to do.
No, that's good. So what I'm saying is that, for example, Aron, listen to me. What I'm saying is, it's very simple, right?
If you have a number of false premises, then you're going to get to a false conclusion. That's what I'm reading so far.
Okay, so premise one, impossible, or let's say postulation one, impossible things can't be in existence. A squared circle can't be in existence. Agreed?
Okay.
Agreed, all right.
Impossible means impossible.
All right.
Okay.
A possible thing, like for example this hat, it's got NY on it, right? Sorry.
Show my bald head, man. What are you doing?
Right. You see this guy? You want to pull a hat off his head?
New York, right? Now this hat could have had on it LA. Yes? could have had on in LA, right? It could have been a blue, it could have been a green hat. Now so in other words, this cap that he's got on his head is a possible contingent thing. I'm sure you're aware of this argument, right? Okay,
I'm just wondering if it's going to go
So it didn't have to
now,
exist.
and it didn't have to exist, right? Now, a necessary fact is 2 + 2 = 4. Agreed?
Okay.
Because that fact, 2 + 2 = 4, could not be any other way.
Well, not in the axioms we've got. If we changed axioms, it could be.
I'm glad there's a physicist standing next to me, because that's the only person who would say otherwise.
We're not changing. We can go to Godel, we can go to and that. But for the sake of argument, we're saying 2 + 2 = 4.
Okay.
Unless we want to really make this an absurd argument or go crazy.
Okay.
Is 2 + 2 = 4 is a necessary fact. So in other words, it's eternally going to be 2 + 2 is always going to be 4.
Okay.
Right. So a necessary fact is something which could not be any other way.
Okay.
In the context of existence, what I'm saying is that you have possible existences and you must have a necessary existence. Because if you have only possible existences, which could be any other way, then it's conceivable that this world would have been any other way. This
There are
universe could have been any
billions
other way.
just within this galaxy, and there are billions
So there
of
must-
galaxies,
there-
so every other way is probably out there.
Perfect. So you're agreeing that this universe could have been any other way.
No, I'm saying that there's all kinds of variations.
Yeah, right. So you agree with that, right?
Yeah.
Mohammed, even if your argument works, no, but I'm saying even if your argument works, I'm saying even if your argument works, there's a gap between the necessary being and God. So even if
not for me.
no, I'm saying even if you establish,
For you,
even if you
because
establish
you're
there's a
Christian.
necessary.
No, that's the thing.
No, I'm not saying Christianity. I'm saying theism. I'm saying even if you say there is a
Can we talk
necessary
about that?
being.
Can we do one thing
No,
at a
but I'm
time?
just saying the
Because we're
argument.
talking to an atheist.
No, but I'm saying just because I just want a clarification.
Yeah.
You can establish the necessary existence of this being, okay?
Right.
But that doesn't mean that there has to be that being has to be
we
identified
haven't
as
done
God.
that yet with him. So can we
But
do
I'm
that?
saying the properties of God doesn't come from
We
what
can
you're
have
saying.
this a separate discussion.
It would be an unfortunate side effect if you're trying to prove God to an atheist and you're deconverting a Christian in the process.
Yes.
You don't think? No, I just think a good arguments for God's existence, and I don't think the ontological argument's good. That's what I would just say.
That's fine, bro.
I don't think it's a strong argument.
But you understand. Now, the point I'm making to you is, if you have a world of only possible existences, nothing.
Which, of course, that's
nothing,
the only thing you could have.
No, you can't have that.
But no, you can only have a world of possible existence, because obviously
Okay.
you can't have impossible existence.
No. You're juxtaposing the word possible with impossible. I agree with you. You can't
I think that's correct.
Aaron,
I think there's a third category called necessary.
Yes, exactly, right?
But, I mean,
Yes, go ahead.
apart from mathematical truths,
Yes.
which
Yes.
are only true because we've got a logical system of axioms we've built up, what do you consider a necessary
Thing.
True.
All right,
Thing.
excellent. So that's a really good question. So we said 2 + 2 = 4 is a necessary fact. It will always be 2 + 2 = 4 eternally, right?
Well, why do you call it necessary?
Necessary because it couldn't be any other way.
Well, not in the, it's
It's not what-
definitionally that
What's your
way.
name? What's your name?
Julia.
Julia. It's not
Well, that's what
I-
he's relying on. He said that you can't have a
By the
squared
way,
circle, so
it's
he's
not-
doing everything by
this
definition.
is not what I call it. This is what Leibniz called it. It's what Gödel calls it. It's what Avicenna calls it. It's what Farabi calls it. Everybody said it calls it necessary existence. So I'm not calling it anything. I'm just bringing it back.
Do you
what's in the
understand that,
literature.
regardless of the names you throw out,
Yeah,
of
yeah.
anybody that you might have read, you have to understand the argument and be able to convey that argument. So it doesn't matter that some other people
Well,
said
I've
that.
written a book on it actually. It's called Kalam Cosmological Arguments. You can buy it if you want. It's actually a bestseller now in the atheist section. It's overtaking God delusion. So I think I have actually understood the argument.
Okay.
It's been peer reviewed as
Well,
well. You
I'm
can
not
check it out.
understanding the argument.
No.
He's not understanding the
That's
argument.
not my-
Are
that's
you
not my
understanding
fault.
the
You're meant
argument?
but you're meant to be an atheist specialist.
I'm
You're-
meant to be?
Right. So if you
Okay.
don't understand the argument, you're one of the figureheads of new atheism.
Okay.
If you don't understand the argument, then there's only one thing I can do is I can try and relay the argument. But it's not. It's
You mean
not my
this is
fault. that you
gonna
don't
keep
understand.
going?
No. Let me say it one more time. Let me make it as easy as possible, right? Say you have a phone. This is a phone, okay? Yes.
Okay.
Okay, let me make this as simple as possible. Is it dependent on something? It's dependent on charge. I have to put the charger inside, yes?
Well, the existence of the phone isn't dependent on charge.
Not the
It's
existence of-
functioning.
Yeah, the functioning. We're just good, excellent. Thank you for that.
Does this get any better from here?
Yeah, it does. Just be patient.
Okay.
Because
I'm losing that. I should have gone already.
Aaron, if I was listening to something you're saying, I was trying to get what you're saying, right? We all have to be patient with each other for learning to take place.
Okay, you had time then? I had time then.
Aaron, this phone has charge in it.
Okay.
If you put, it requires a charger in order to be charged. Now, say for example, I connect this phone to another phone, yes, with a wire. I put this phone to another phone, on a wire, right? You've got this phone, another phone, and a wire, right? And then you've got that phone with another phone and the wire. So you've got 3 phones, right? You have 3 phones. If you have 3 phones, what will eventually happen to the functionality of the phones? That the charge will run out. Would you agree with me?
So what's this to do with necessity and possibility?
Can you allow me to finish?
No, but I'm just saying
you're just poisoning the world. Everyone can see what you're
No,
doing.
but I'm just saying. No, Muhammed. All I'm saying is,
as a Christian, you should just
all I'm saying, but it's not about Christianity and Islam. It's about what is a good argument or not. This argument.
Let me make it then.
I think she clarified the point very well. She clarified the point very well.
Let me make the argument, and then you can judge.
No, but I was just saying, what is your analogy to do with necessity?
But if you finish the argument, well, you haven't let me finish, have you? If you don't let someone finish and then you say it's not good, then that's actually disingenuity. All right. So you've got 3 phones. Say, for example, all of them got charged, right? So I connect this phone to another phone and this phone to another phone. Now, what will happen if I connect all 3 of them to allow them all to charge using each other's energies? Eventually, they all run out of charge. We all agree. And the reason why is because they're all dependent. The phone is dependent. The charge of the phone, the analogy here is the charge of the phone. The charge of the phone is dependent, yes? Now, what I'm saying is, if you have a world only of limited, limited dependent things, all of them will depend upon another thing, and if this is in the context of existence, you will not have existence, because you have to have something which depends upon nothing in order for everything else to exist. Does that make sense? So in other words, in our example and analogy, you have to have an infinite power source.
What does an atom depend on for existence?
So going back to what we just said, the necessary existence. That existence.
Okay, but you haven't shown yet that necessary things aren't also possible things, and those 2 categories.
Now, what I'm saying is, what I've shown is that possible or contingent things, by definition, are dependent. A phone, this phone is dependent on another phone for charge. That phone on another phone for charge. If we connect them, right? Yeah, just let me finish. If you have 3 of them, if you have 5 of them, if you have 10 of them, then they're all going to be dependent on each other. Now, what's going to eventually happen with the phones? They're going to run out of charge. What I'm saying to you is that the functionality of the phone's charge here is analogous to existence, in my analogy. And it's not a perfect analogy. You can destroy the analogy if you want. But what I'm saying is that this is my only thing that I can try and draw it closer to you. So if things which are depend upon dependent things ad infinitum, unless there's an infinite power source somewhere in the equation, there will not be any existence. And what I'm saying is that the infinite power source, if you like, or the necessary existence that we refer to, is God. Now, we call it God.
What if it's not an infinite power source?
It can't be, right? It has to be.
Why?
Because otherwise nothing else would be in existence.
Okay, you haven't shown that okay.
Yeah, go on, Julie.
Do you
understand this point? Do you get it?
So we as organisms all get our energy from the sun, right?
Yes, good.
So, and that doesn't have to be infinite.
No, hold on. This is a very good example. So we're in, for example, an ecosystem, right? You've got human beings, you've got animals, whatever you want. All of that is dependent upon the sun, yes? The sun itself...
Which is not infinite.
It's not infinite, but the sun itself is dependent upon other things.
What?
Other suns. No, other suns, other galaxies.
How is our sun dependent on other suns?
It's dependent on the laws of physics. It's dependent upon a range of factors. Helium. If you didn't have helium, you couldn't have a sun. You have to have different... If you break down the sun, we agree, right? So the sun is dependent, and we agree, yeah?
Okay, I think the fundamental flaw with your argument is that you haven't shown that the most fundamental pieces of our universe are dependent on anything.
Are we done? Can I go?
Before you continue, he understands this, or I just want him to fully understand the argument. He's already nearly there. What you said is that the sun is not dependent on something else, and we've shown that actually it is, right? So the whole universe now, there's only 2 ways you can go.
And none of it is infinite.
No problem. Is the universe dependent or independent?
The way that you're talking about, the sun having to have fuel and helium or whatever, okay. If I take that, then the sun is dependent on other things.
Yes, fine.
And it's not infinite.
So no, excellent.
And not necessary.
Right. So same thing now. So what we need to have, because that chain will continue going, dependent things can't depend upon dependent things ad infinitum. You have to have something which is necessary somewhere in that equation in order for everything else to be dependent.
So you're telling me that you believe in a Big Banger?
Yes.
That's the entirety of your argument. You could have summed that up in a minute.
You don't have to believe in a
half hour ago.
No, not really, because Big Bang is a cosmology which can be refuted, as I'm sure you know, right? Many people have refuted the Big Bang cosmology. I'm not talking about the beginning of the universe. I don't care if the universe is eternal or not. I'm just saying that you've got two options. Either the universe is independent or dependent.
Did he make an argument? Because I'm not getting it.
But by the way, this is not my argument. This is the argument of, by the way, this is not my argument. It's the argument of Ibn Sina, of Leibniz,
Yes, I know.
of, what do you call it, of Gödel, and all of those individuals. Philosophers had to grapple with those arguments. If you don't understand the argument,
Nice meeting you. Thank you for stepping
Bertrand Russell
in.
had to deal with those arguments. He had to respond
Very
to
nice
Leibniz.
meeting you.
Yeah, sorry that we weren't able to finish ours, but thank you.
That was very good.
No, thank you very much. Thank you.
So do you understand the argument?
I was very impressed earlier.
No, thank you.
One question
Yeah,
after that.
Aaron, do you get the point now?
I think so. You
Yeah,
believe in a Big Banger.
No, not really. I'm saying that I believe in a necessary existence that everything
Yeah.
else depends upon.
Right.
And now, can you refute that?
You assume that there's.
But Aaron, you're
that
not
God
giving
is
me
the
any, you're not
energy
giving me any
source of the
contentions to the argument. All you're just saying that is my assumption. Yeah,
Yeah.
That is my. I'm making a point from first principles. Have you got any refutation for it?
I don't need a refutation for it. You ended the whole thing with
on-
an assumption that was not warranted by
What's the
your
assumption?
principles.
Which one?
That you assume there's a God.
I didn't say that.
Okay.
All right.
You believe that the power source for everything is God.
I didn't
right?
say. I didn't say that. What I said was just my
How much
articulation.
longer is this going to take?
My articulation is to be respected, right? Just like you don't want to be misquoted, I don't want to be misquoted.
All right, I'm
All I've
running
said-
out of time. Can we make this quick?
Yeah, of course. All I'm saying is that there is it's impossible, it's logically inconceivable that dependent things can depend upon dependent things ad infinitum. All I'm saying
That's
is
why
that
they're not infinite.
Nobody
Yeah,
claims
yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Nobody claims that.
Fundamental particles
All right,
don't
so
depend on anything.
Pardon?
Can you prove to me that fundamental particles
All right,
depend
I'm
on
out of here.
anything?
Yes, they depend upon other things. Of course they
I
do.
get
But
it.
come here and you prove to me that they don't. Come.
You're the one trying to prove something to me. The burden of proof is on you.
No. I've said you've just made a claim. Actually, you said that.
No, I've said that
Julia, sorry.
necessarily for
Julia.
your argument you need to prove a thing.
No. You said that particles don't depend on anything. Can you prove that for me?
No, I've said that for your argument to hold, you need to show that fundamental particles don't depend on
Understand
anything. Okay?
All right. So here's the thing. What you and Aaron couldn't deal with is, and this is the new atheist movement. Subhanallah, the new atheist movement is crumbling right in front of me, one by one. Every single one of them cannot deal with this argument, and it's not because of. By the way, it's I can't believe it. Like it really all it took was just a little bit of bringing out an argument, and the whole new atheist movement in front of my very
Okay,
eyes.
could you instead of preaching make your argument?
No, I will make my argument, Julia.
Grandstanding, not preaching.
Yes. Sorry.
Pardon?
Grandstanding, not preaching. Is that right?
Yeah. So what I was going to say, Julia, is you said particles don't depend on anything.
I'm talking about fundamental particles.
No,
I'm saying no.
Can you prove that?
I'm telling you that for your argument to hold, you need to show that fundamental particles don't depend on anything. That's all
Julia,
I'm saying.
What you said, Julia. You said right here and right now, and it was on the camera. I'm not a liar.
I say I believe that that's the case.
Okay, can you
but
prove it? No, you said
no,
prove it.
I can't
So
prove
why are you
it.
making a claim?
No, because I'm telling you that for your argument to hold, you need to show that that's
what?
the case. That fundamental particles depend on something.
Okay, they depend upon the laws of nature. Disprove it.
Wait, no.
Wait a minute, no.
No,
No.
What do you mean they depend on the laws
The
of
laws
nature?
of physics,
Which are
presupposed by the study of science.
No. Can you tell me what the laws of physics are?
There are many. If you want to go and see a book on it, I'll direct you.
Okay, no.
you don't
I'm
answer the
somebody who
question.
studies physics.
All right, let
I
me
want
ask-
you to tell me what you think the laws of physics
Let me-
are,
let me-
because physicists don't know. That's the
Okay,
problem.
well, let me ask you a question. So as someone who studies physics,
Yeah.
you're still an undergrad, right?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so you're in your first year?
Yes, I am.
All right, so someone like Martin Rees has wrote a book on just 6 numbers.
I don't know who that is.
Okay, so you should know, because this is a person who's actually outlined the 6 fundamental constants, or among them, for example, n. N equals nature. He actually calls it N for nature, and he says that is, and that's when he was talking about the numbers that detail the laws of nature. For example, he mentions 6 different numbers: E, N.
Those are numbers of mathematics rather than physics.
They are physics. What are you
No,
talking about? What
Euler's
university-
number.
What university did you study?
Imperial College London.
Okay, so I'm sure you're clever enough to know that when mathematics is applied to the cosmos, it's called physics. You've just done
Yes,
your A-levels.
mathematics.
You've
No,
just
I'm from Germany. I did my Abitur.
Okay, you've done that, so you know the deal, right? So I don't have to tell you that. I mean, I'm not a physicist, but you should know this.
Well, I know that physics is an attempt to mathematically describe the universe.
There you
The
have it.
best
So-
we
so
have
that's
is
what
the
Martin Rees
standard
said.
model.
So good. Martin Rees said that. He got 6 numbers. He said, what are the rules? It can be described in different ways. Martin Rees has got his standard
What are
way.
those numbers except for E?
And he's got E equals N equals nature, which he said that
Which is mathematically meaningless.
No, let me explain. Why is it mathematics? He actually gave a number, which is 0.07.
What significance does 0.07 have?
Is it called physics when mathematics is applied to the universe or not?
Yes.
Okay, so when he says 0.07 is a number n, which is applied to the universe, is that physics?
How does he apply to the universe?
Well, he looks at, look at E, for example, right?
Yes. E comes from mathematics.
Right, so he says that that's the conversion of helium into energy, for example.
No, E is, I mean, if we're talking about Euler's constant. Epsilon.
Whatever it is.
Well, epsilon gets used for a lot of different things.
Right, so he uses it in his own way, and he gives his own articulation of it. Go and check the preface of this book with the introduction.
Okay, look. What you're saying right now is that there are 7 numbers which are important. 6, okay.
According to
Go for it. 6 numbers are important. Right. How does this relate to the fundamental particles?
Your question was that particles don't depend on anything, they're independent. I'm saying to you...
No, I'm saying you have to show that.
Do you believe that particles are independent?
Of what?
You said please don't retract your argument, because watch this, Josh. This is what Christian missionaries need to learn. Now, you're saying that particles are independent. Yes or no?
I'm saying they're fundamental particles.
No, because you were trying to interrupt me.
I'm saying that to the best of my knowledge, there are a certain amount of fundamental... What I'm basing this off is the standard model, which is the best model we have for the universe right now. It is incomplete. All physicists will admit that it's incomplete.
No problem. But Julia, you said that particles, fundamental particles, don't depend on anything.
Definitionally, they're not composed of anything else.
No. You said, unless you want to retract that statement, which is what every atheist does when they're in front of me. No, you said that fundamental particles don't depend on anything.
I believe that to be the case. I do not claim that it's true.
Perfect. Now, do you believe that fundamental particles don't depend on anything?
I believe that to be the case,
Excellent.
but I'm not claiming that
Julia,
that's true.
Thank you for saying that, because now what you've shown is that you believe in the existence of an independent being. But the only thing is, no, hold on. The only thing is now...
Do you know how many fundamental particles there are?
No problem. But you accept, because before you were saying there's no such thing as a necessary thing. You're saying now that there is... Now, hold on, Julie. And you're going to retract your statement because that's what every atheist does in front of me. You said...
You're putting words in my mouth.
No, it's on camera. You said you believe... You just said it 2 minutes ago. You just said you believe that fundamental particles are not dependent on anything. By definition, what you're effectively saying is you believe fundamental particles are independent. Now, what I'm saying
technically, what I'm saying what I mean when I say fundamental particle is...
That's what you mean.
No. I'm just explaining what the standard model says.
Right, okay, go ahead.
Fundamentally, according to quantum field theory, fundamental particles are essentially just energy spikes in a field.
But your belief...
So they sort of depend on energy.
Julia, you shouldn't have come here today and tried to challenge me. Because what you've done, no, seriously, you should really think about it before you come and stand and make claims without revising it.
I've told you what you need to show me to make your argument.
I don't need to show you anything.
Yes, you do.
You shouldn't have come here because what you've done now is you've given me exactly what I wanted. In the beginning you said that I have to prove that there's a necessary independent being. Now you've just said you believe that fundamental particles are not dependent on... Your words exactly. You believe. You said I believe. Fundamental particles are not dependent on anything. Now, all I'm saying as a Muslim is that my understanding of...
So
let me finish.
God is a muon.
Let me finish. No, your God... Yeah, your God is is that. The only difference between my God and your God is size. That's the only difference. Honestly, you need to understand you're not an atheist anymore in front of me. I've converted you straight to Islam. The only thing you need to do... No. What you need to know and believe in is the right attributes of God and the Prophet Muhammad as the messenger. And obviously, if you want to believe in Jesus...
Is Muhammad the Prophet, the messenger of a muon, of an electron, of a photon?
No, listen to me. You said that...
And also, I will add...
Julie, now you don't need to add anything. You've given me exactly what I want to hear.
No. I haven't, because I have repeated from the beginning.
Fundamental particles are independent. That's what she said, not dependent on anything. That's the definition of independence. Now, if you believe in an independent entity... Now, let me tell you something from an Islamic perspective. And you have to understand this. Let me just finish, sorry.
I think the word independent is very misleading in this context.
Wait a minute, you said not dependent on anything. How could something be not dependent on anything?
Can you let me clarify?
Yes, please.
I think the word dependent is very misleading because fundamentally, even inside the standard model, things are interdependent. They're just interdependent on a fundamental level. And the thing is, I know that the standard model isn't complete, so there is some deeper layer somewhere.
So it's interdependent.
Right? Oh yeah, they're interdependent.
So what fundamental particles are interdependent?
Well, in the sense that everything relies on energy to some extent. Everything, as I said, particles are essentially just expressions of energy in a quantum field.
Julie, thank you. You're contradicting yourself. Because interdependence entails dependence. If you're saying that fundamental particles are interdependent, you're saying it's dependent. Then you said that's not dependent on anything. That's a contradiction. Either you want to believe in this or that.
You're putting words in my mouth.
Josh, this is what atheists do.
Yeah.
Julie, is there anything you want to add? Sorry, we're done here.
Can I just ask one question?
Yes, of course.
You talk about contingency. I understand it's a pity that people didn't give you a chance to give your full argument. Is the Quran contingent?
No, absolutely not.
So we've got the Quran is not contingent.
No, because we believe it's an attribute of God.
Well, that's the issue, isn't it? So
it's not an issue.
Well, it
you
is.
asked the question. You thought I would say yes.
No, I knew you would say no.
Okay, no,
I knew you would say no.
But
actually,
didn't work.
So it didn't need God.
No, it's an attribute of God. The
Well,
Quran is an attribute of God.
Is it dependent?
It's a subgroup.
Is it interdependent?
The Quran is a subgroup of an attribute of God, which is speech. So it's
which came first?
No, it was there at the same time. It was always there. It's eternal.
Yeah, well, this is what you're saying, but I'm afraid it's not a great philosophical argument. No, it's not a great philosophical argument.
It's done, honestly, it's done.
You have the forced cause argument by theologians that say everything is contingent on a necessary being.
Yes,
so
yes.
This is the problem, yeah?
Yes.
You're presupposing a necessary being, but
I'm not presupposing that.
Okay.
I'm arguing it. No, that's a false understanding.
Okay.
And once again, you can read my book. It's called Kalam Cosmological Arguments. It's a bestseller now.
Okay.
On what do you call it? On Amazon. And the atheist. What's your name, my friend? Michael, nice to meet you, man.
Nice to meet you.
You're a nice man. You didn't come like Julie with a hype and then have to leave with her head, her tail between her legs.
Be nice, man. Be nice.
No, I like you. Huh?
Let's go back to the discussion.
No, I will do. But what I was going to say to you, what's your name again? Sorry, I'm bad. Michael, here's the thing. You're absolutely right.
Okay.
In one way, because what you're saying is that we have to reason. Your assumption here, what I'm getting from you, is that we have to reason the independent being without assuming the independent. And what I'm saying is that the independent, self-sufficient, and necessary being that I've just described has to be understood because of the contrary proposition of there being only possible existence in the world being an impossible one. So to avoid impossibility, we have to believe in necessary being.
Yeah.
That's
I don't disagree
so because
with that. I'm saying
what we're trying to do as philosophers or as logicians is we're trying to avoid impossibilities, right? Because we know impossibilities cannot exist in the real world. And an impossibility is where you have dependent things depending upon dependent things ad infinitum.
Okay.
If you go back to my example of the phone, I think you get my example now. I think you get my argument, by the way.
I understand what you're saying, but I'm just thinking that the terminologies that you're using, you're not defining them well. So
Okay,
what do you mean? What do you mean by necessary?
Necessary is something which could not have been any other way. Number one, is not dependent. It's independent, so it's not dependent on anything. In other words, self-sufficient, right? And is eternal. So in other words, it's always the case, whether temporality is applied to it or not, that these qualities will always remain in the necessary existence.
So the Quran, outlining all the things that the recitation does outline, creates determinism, doesn't it, really? Which is the argument.
We believe in determinism.
You do believe in determinism?
We believe God is a determinant.
That everything is determined. No free will, I mean.
No, we believe in compatibilism.
Because if you're creating a Quran that's saying all of these things happen, talks about the Bible, talks about the past, talks about the future. John.
I like it.
Then it's all determined, isn't it? And you haven't really, and it's no free will, and you haven't really demonstrated the way you tried to demonstrate to Julie and Aron how the Quran and Allah can be non-interdependent, eternal, and not dependent on anything else, and yet the Quran is determined, is dependent on all of the things that the Quran describes happening.
That's clear. I understand what you're saying. So because there's a misunderstanding of the Islamic theology here.
I mean, it was a big thing, wasn't it?
Ahmad and Mu'tazilis. I'm a Hanbali, right? So I follow Ahmad.
No, right? But I think a lot of people were killed over this, weren't they?
Well, not really. I mean, it's
not a lot of people.
Not a lot, but some people were tortured over it. Yeah.
Okay, tortured.
Yeah, we were on the side of those guys. We're on the side of those guys that were tortured. So, in Islamic theology, the Quran is not created.
I know. Well, in your belief of that.
Yeah. No, it's according to the Sunni understanding, right? So according to the Sunni understanding, it's not created. Obviously, the Mu'tazilis were a group of people that came extinct that believe it is created, but we don't believe it. So, because it's not created, and they have their own theology, by the way. You have to go.
Not contingent, yeah.
Yeah. So it's because it's not created. It's like I'm speaking to you now, right? So I'm speaking to you now. My speech is part of my attribute. It's part of me, actually, right? Because my speech is part of me. So a speech is an attribute of me. But it's an attribute which is intrinsic to me. So in other words, the speech of Allah is intrinsic to Allah. And the Quran is a subset of that speech, meaning it's also eternal, just like Allah.
But you could say the same about reality. You could say the same about reality. That reality is an expression of Allah, and therefore
it's an expression of his attribute of creation.
Of creation.
Yeah.
So it's
also we differentiate.
Also eternal.
No. Because what we say is that it could have otherwise not been the case. So the universe can be taken out of existence, whereas Allah can never be taken out of existence.
Can the Quran be taken out?
No. Why not? And the Quran in the recitational form cannot be taken out of existence. In physical form, like books and stuff.
No, I'm not talking about.
We believe that will happen.
I'm not talking about the physical form.
We believe it will come a time.
But you're effectively saying that the recitation is eternal. I mean, even as a recitation, it's quite difficult to have a start and a beginning of something that's eternal.
Yeah, no, we don't have a start.
Well, the beginning of the recitation.
No, it was always there.
Yeah, I know, but when it's spoken by God, that recitation.
No. So here's the misunderstanding. No, I see what you're saying, but because the speech of Allah is one category, and then a subset of that is the Quran. That Quran is eternal. It was only transmitted to the Prophet by the angel Gabriel, which was already there eternally in what we call the Lawh al-Mahfuz, the preserved tablet. So there's an entrenchment of all of those things, codifications, and then that was transmitted to them.
Yeah, but philosophically, I don't think you made a sufficient
No, but
argument.
just taking a line of what you're saying. But then there is an eternally existing thing with Allah, which is not Allah.
No. We say that's part of Allah.
Yes, but it's not Allah.
No, we will say
it's identical to it.
We'll say it's part of Allah's attribute.
But one second, is it identical to God?
Well, it's like saying, is His mercy Him?
Yeah, but I'm asking, is it identical?
Right, so we would say that it's an attribute of it's one of His many attributes.
Yes, but his mercy his merciful acts are different from his mercy, right? His mercy is an attribute, but his merciful acts are contingent.
Classical theism would say that there isn't anything in God which is not God. So God's attributes are identical to God. So this is classical theism is held to that.
Well,
so I'm saying
that's a very logical study. It's actually a fallacy, in fact.
It's not a fallacy. It's a traditional position in theistic thought.
It's a fallacious one.
No, it's not, because it tries to uphold.
Right, let's not
one second. One second. But it shouldn't just be
Well,
because
no,
he's an
it's
atheist.
irrelevant,
We're discussing about something which you are holding as true,
Right,
and I'm coming back to you on a point.
No, first of all,
it doesn't matter if the person's atheist or theist or
that
whatever.
view.
Yes.
Do you believe God has parts?
Sorry?
Do you believe
No.
God has parts? I don't believe God has parts.
Yes.
So
but then you have a problem because you're contradicting yourself.
No, let me explain. Right? We believe God is immaterial and incorporeal.
Yes.
And He's also partless, right?
Yes. Divine simplicity, He lacks parts. He's not composed. But then you have a problem because if He lacks parts, because I'm saying His speech has to be a part, because then if it's not identical, why not? Yes, because the only reason He doesn't have parts is because everything within Him is identical to Him. So He's not composed by anything.
What's your position? Is your position that God has parts or not?
No, He doesn't have parts.
So why are you saying that you...
So I'm saying anything within God is identical to
Here's
God.
another thing.
So I'm saying...
The Quran, if it's not contingent...
Sorry?
What do you mean by...
So I'm saying God's attributes, if it's omnipotence, His mercy, or whatever you say, has to be identical to God. So that is a business.
What do you mean by that?
Yeah,
the articulation I'm confused by.
One second. The only reason why people have held to that is because they have to say that then God is dependent.
Maybe we agree. Because let me explain
God,
why
can I just say this point?
Yeah.
Because if they are not identical to God, then things within God is dependent on them.
Josh.
God is not dependent on His omnipotence. He's dependent on His omniscience.
And to add, just before you answer that, it's the same thing.
Right.
Same thing. So also, is the Quran able to exist eternally without Allah?
No,
exactly.
Because the Quran is an expression of Allah.
Well, then it's contingent on Allah.
No, right. it's like for example.
Well, I think that's a fair argument.
No, so then you have to.
Okay, I know what the issue is here. I do know what the issue is here. The issue is here when you're talking about things, anything, right? What are the only things you can make reference to? You can either make reference to mathematical truths, or you can make reference to cosmological ones. Like, for example, in today's discussion, we're making reference to cosmological truths. When I say cosmological, let me be clear. We're talking about things which pertain to the universe, to the cosmos. So, for example, you're wearing a shirt. That's a cosmological. If I were to make an example, analogy with that shirt, that would be a cosmological example, right? Now, what I'm saying is that all of your cosmological understandings, especially as it relates to mereology, and I'm being very clear here, mereology being the study of parts and wholes, okay? Mereology being the study of parts and wholes I'm not for you. I know you're a philosopher, but for other people. No.
That's okay.
But you know, mereology being the study of wholes and parts. Any cosmological example we're going to bring is going to be irrelevant to the metaphysical deity which is God.
That's not true, because you can have metaphysical parts. So you have things like matter and form. Yes, but I'm saying you just said you can have metaphysical parts, you can have physical parts. Okay, metaphysical parts will be things like matter, form, essence,
we're saying
existence.
all of those things are irrelevant to God.
No, they're not irrelevant to God.
So it's
No, they're not irrelevant to God. They're not irrelevant to God.
Why?
No, because some people have had to debate, is God's essence identical to his existence?
No. All I'm saying, Josh, is that when we're analysing parts and wholes in the world that we live in, that study gets us nowhere in understanding the metaphysical reality of God.
Yes, it does. Because what you're doing, you negate those of God. Yes, philosophers have always tried to negate these things of
Josh,
God.
me and you both believe, and our respective theologies, that we can never be acquainted with the true essence. We can never know exactly what the true essence of God is.
Yes, I have no problem with that.
So if we both agree with that, that the true essence of God, and put essence underlines, if we don't know what, how God is, how He is in essence, then what I'm saying is that anything you can imagine or anything that you've observed is not relevant to the discussion of God's essence.
Yes, it is. Because,
So you're prepared to quite readily say that the Quran is that essence.
Can I say something about your argument from earlier about the dependent because it seems like even if you granted your full argument that there can't be nothing but dependent things, there's a big jump from there's an absolute something to God.
Exactly. That's exactly why I came in. Like
perfect.
Necessary.
You're
saying there's this necessary being.
Yes.
There is absolutely nothing to actually say this is Allah.
All right.
It is just a necessary being. There's nothing to say it is conscious.
Perfect.
It is personal.
Yes.
It interacts with people.
You're absolutely right.
That's another argument.
I want to hear what you're saying.
And then you can only make descriptive features of it. So like let's say with respect to time, like it's timeless, it's spaceless. There's nothing prescriptive about it. You can't derive an ought from an is. It just is. And now you're saying it's Allah. So that's where the problem.
Right.
I'm right.
You're right. And if that's what
he wasn't saying that.
No, you're right, and you're right. Not that it's Allah with all of the attributes mentioned in the Quran. Absolutely. Do you know what? I want to shake your hand for saying that. Shake my hand. And shake my hand as well because this is an entire.
You're your own TV show, man. I think you
That wasn't the point that you were making. So that's the whole thing.
So that is a very legitimate interrogation. So much so, it's actually very true, right? So we can't say, and I want to agree with you here, that just because you have this necessary independent being, right? That this necessary independent being is personal, has the ability to love, is the loving one. What do you call it? Merciful, wrathful, right? No. All of, you cannot, and this is my contention, right? And I agree with this point. And this is why I think a lot of philosophers have gone wrong, especially Christian philosophers, right? No, and a lot of Muslim ones. A lot of them. A lot of Muslim.
I'd like to hear the reason then.
The reason is because they try to make too many inferences from first principles. The truth is, of the attributes that you can actually get from this necessary being, there are probably just like 10 maximum, if you really wanted to stretch it, that you can get from this. For example, we talked about the necessity of this thing, the independence of this thing, the fact that this thing is, pardon?
Timeless?
Timeless, possibly, right? That could be argued, by the way. Certainly, you could say that the eternity of these things. Apart from that, from this particular argument, you couldn't even. You could say knowledge. You could make that inference because of the fact that the universe is placed in a certain way. You can make the argument of particularization, which is the argument of so many philosophers. And I'll tell you that's a different argument, by the way. But so these are the attributes you can get from God. Yeah. But you can't get the attributes of love and all this. Now I agree with that. Now, so here's the point. This argument, for me, or for us Muslims, it defines because we have a basic understanding of God. What is the basic definition of God? We have it in Surah Al-Ikhlas, in chapter 112 of the Quran. So we say, قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ, say He's God, one and only. So who is God? According to the Quran, what is the basic definition of God according to the Quran? That He's one and only. Oh yeah, and oneness being one of the major attributes, by the way, as well. Okay. So one and only, that He's independent, that He's begets not nor is He begotten, otherwise He's eternal. And in other parts of the Quran it says that He's basically He's eternal, right? Pre-eternal and post-eternal. So, in other words, what we're saying is that apart from those attributes, I can't say, well, from this argument, I'm going to say God's personal. And if someone came to me, even as a Christian or a Muslim or a Jew, and said, look, like William Lane Craig does and many other people do, and say, look, we can, Richard Swinburne and other individuals, and say, look, we can see that it's a personal God. I say it's a very weak argument, in my opinion. I take that on board fully. So what I say is that in order for us to know the remainder of God's attributes, for us we have to be acquainted with some kind of revelation. And so ipso facto, if you have a revelation, say Bible, Quran, or any other revelation which claims to be from God, we have to scrutinize that revelation. And whatever one is the most authoritative would be the basis for the acquaintance of the rest of the attributes of God, which we have not been acquainted with from logical first principles. So yeah, I agree with that point.
So why does it, you said something, why does it have to be one necessarily?
Because if you can't have two,
why can't you have two?
You can't have two independents.
Why?
Because if you have two independents, then which one is depending on which?
No, they don't have to depend.
Alright, number two, let me explain. If you have the Quran, let me tell you the Quranic argument. Yeah?
No, but I just on that point you said.
I'm answering your question.
Okay, you're answering the question of why they can't.
Yeah,
why they can't.
Okay, so the Quran says in chapter number 23, verse 91, it clearly answers this question.
Yeah.
لَعَلَى بَعْضُهُمْ عَلَى بَعْضٍ. If this was the case, that there was more than one of those things, more than one Almighty, then they would have both tried to outstrip one another. You can't have more than one absolute controller of the universe.
Like yin and yang.
Because you have three options. Let me explain why. Option one, either they compromise. So for example, you have two independent beings that are all powerful, and they compromise on, say for example, you have a tree in front of you, right? And I'll take control of the branches, and you can take control of the roots.
No, but can I pause? You made a mistake there. You made a mistake. But I'm saying already you've made a mistake. Can I tell you? Your argument led you to an independent being, not an independent, omnipotent being.
Okay, fine.
So 1 second.
Yes.
You can't have two independent, omnipotent beings because they will cancel each other out.
No, okay.
But you can have two independent beings.
I see your point. Yes. I take your point. In fact.
But you were just arguing for all powerful.
No, I take your point. The reason why I mentioned omnipotence here is because we both believe in it. But
but I'm saying your argument.
From the argument.
Yes.
From the argument, then we'll talk about the independence.
Yeah, but you can have two independent beings. No. You just can't have two independent. Why not? Tell me.
Let me explain.
Yes.
Because when we say necessary being, it's number one, a being that could not be any other way.
Yes. Okay.
And number two, an independent being. Let me explain.
So why can't you have two?
Right. From this argument, so the Quranic argument is about omnipotence. You're right.
Yes.
There's another argument. There's more than one argument, right? Yes. But here, let's go to this point.
Yes.
Say, for example, we have two independents.
Yes.
Or two necessary beings.
Yes.
Okay, what's differentiating a necessary being one from necessary being two?
What's differentiating?
Yeah.
It depends what your individuating factor is.
No, perfect. Good
yeah,
answer.
So how do you individuate?
Now you're being critical, yeah? Here's the answer. If there is any differentiating, listen to this. You're gonna be amazed by it. It's not by the way. These are not. I have to be fair and honest.
It's very big of you.
No, I have to be fair. These are not my arguments. Okay. Your points. This is in the medieval books, right? And I can go to my book, Kalam Cosmological Arguments.
Oh, for goodness sakes, man. Please, you gotta edit this out, please.
No. Kalam Cosmological Arguments. By Muhammed Hijab, a bestseller. Now,
think that
No, Josh, because you only know of Anselm's one.
I only know about, what are you talking about? I know of Anselm's, I know of Malcolm's, Norman Malcolm, I know of Alvin Plantinga's, I know of Gödel's, so I do know of these people.
No, okay, you've just mentioned 4
Yes.
individuals. Let's go through each and every single one of them.
Yes.
All of those 4 individuals that you've mentioned in the philosophy of religion, Plantinga being a contemporary guy.
Plantinga is the strongest one.
You believe that?
Yes.
That's what William Lane Craig believes.
No, I don't care what William Lane Craig believes. I'm saying contemporary philosophy of religion will probably say Plantinga.
I don't want to go into details because people don't care.
But you just made a comment. Plantinga's argument is probably the best ontological argument that we have, even though it's not strong.
If you look at chapter 1 of my book.
Oh my gosh.
Now, I don't know why are you laughing at this?
Because you're selling me your book, right?
Advertising.
Your book, my book. Okay, man. Okay, I get it. You wrote a book, great. I mean,
the brother's got to eat, man. The brother's got to eat.
Hey, come on, man. Yeah.
Well, am I not allowed to speak to you on this level?
You are, but I mean, you're just telling me your book. Okay.
It's without the advert. He's paid for the app without the advert.
Okay, listen. For you, Josh, I got some books at home. I'll give you one for free. Just tell me you got my number, yeah? Just to let you know, I'm not trying to sell you anything, right? It's only £3. I know your cap looks like it's a ding.
I'm going to do a ding every time there's an advert.
I'm not going to do that. Right, so here's what I'm going to say, right? So the ontological arguments Western people are associated with are those that kind of you mentioned, right? Gödel, Kurt Gödel, Plantinga, what do you call it? Anselm of Canterbury.
Anselm, you got Descartes.
Well, Descartes, I don't know if we would count his as an ontological.
No, it is an ontological. Of course, it's an ontological. It is, and
fine.
That's the one that Kant refuted. Yes.
No problem.
Yes.
Kant did refute the critique of pluralism. It's my book as well. Now, here's the point. Here's the point. My understanding of an ontological argument in the philosophy of religion is different, and also I'm backed by a lot of scholars on that. So I've got that. You can research that. I think that the argument that I've made of contingency is actually also operates as an ontological argument. But that's a discussion we can have another day. It's quite technical. I don't want to bore the people.
Okay.
The question of how could there be two independent. Right. So this is the answer. The answer is, if you have any differentiating, if you have two necessary beings, and you have any differentiating factor from necessary being A and necessary being B, yeah? If you have anything that differentiates them, then that nullifies or that cancels out the idea that they're necessary beings. Why? Because a necessary being could not be any other way. And if you have two things which are differentiated from each other, then that suggests that at least one of them could have been any other way.
No, not
yes, it does. Yes, it does. Let me explain it. Josh.
Okay,
take your time.
Say your point.
Take your time.
I was just trying to comment that I don't think that's true.
I know. You're Trinitarian, so that's of course
something to do with Trinitarianism.
It's got everything to do. That's why.
No, it's not. I'm just saying.
Yeah. That's why he's doing this.
No, listen. All I'm saying is that your argument is not strong.
Let me explain.
Because your argument doesn't lead to the conclusion that it has to be two.
Oh, Josh.
Only one necessary being.
Well, let me explain why.
You can finish it.
A necessary being could not have been any other way.
There is no love in this world. Even your Allah.
That's brilliant.
Even Allah doesn't love unbelievers. Your Allah is
So if you just $1 for dollars.
Okay, anyway, sorry, continue.
Like a coin, yeah? So if you have a coin, it has two sides, but it's a single coin, so maybe that's what it's trying to say.
No, I'm saying, finish your point and I'll comment.
So if a necessary being is a being that can't be any other way,
yes,
then what we're saying is that if anything differentiates it, if you've got two of them, and say for example, let me make this easy for you. Peter Adamson said it's interesting doing one of his podcasts. So I'm going to use Peter Adamson's example, right? I have to be honest with people that it's not my example. When you talk about Avicenna's philosophy, you can check this out as a podcast, you can check this out as a reference. He says that, for example, this is an example, if you've got two necessary beings, and one of them has a cap, and one of them does not have a cap. Okay, the one that has a cap, could that one that has a cap have been any different? What do you mean? You've got two necessary beings. One has a cap, one does not. Could the one that has a cap have been any different?
Yes.
Yes. So it's not necessary.
No. Can I see how the mistake you're making here?
It's not me.
No, the mistake, whoever, you or whatever the person you're psyching.
Can I ask a question? Have you ever thought?
Can I say my point? I'm doing a philosophy PhD. I'm in my 3rd year, and I don't even know about necessity and modality. Are you serious?
Can I tell you why though?
Can I finish my point? I didn't understand why you're going down that route. Okay.
No, I did that because I don't think you've heard this argument before.
Can I finish my point?
Yeah, possible.
I see the way, what I see is how you're making the mistake is that you're where you are locating necessity. We are talking about the necessity of existence.
Yes.
Not the necessity of a certain property.
Absolutely.
So the property you said here of wearing a cap is necessarily he's wearing a cap. So he cannot be different. But that's nothing to do with his existence.
That's a good
So I'm saying yes. I'm saying you're talking about essential and necessary properties over existence.
What you're doing here.
Yes.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. That's a very high IQ point.
Okay.
Yeah. I like that. Hold on.
Right.
Yeah, he's now you're thinking on a high level. Yeah. I like it.
Anyways,
all right. So you're right. You're absolutely right. The analogy that I gave. I'm saying, for example, a cap, right? Obviously, in the context of existence could be either arranged in one way, that could be rearranged, or that could be any other way, or not. So, in that analogy of the cap, you could say the same thing. Right, so I just use it as an analogy.
No, so I'm not even saying your analogy. I'm saying even your point now. And I'm grateful you brought that analogy because it makes me understand your point better. Then.
Yes.
So where I believe again you're still making a mistake is. Necessary existence and essential properties. There are different things. So one second. So one second. No, I'm not going with the analogy. My existence might be necessary, but I can still gain and lose attributes. Even though I exist forever, I cannot cease to exist.
Yes.
Okay, I'm necessary. I'm independent, but I can still gain and lose attributes, even though I exist forever.
No.
So yes,
I get your point.
Yes.
I get you right. But what we're saying is that in which way is this necessary existence existing?
So then I'm going back to my point that I brought up.
No.
So you brought about how can you distinguish between the two? You can have two necessarily existent things that are individuated by different properties. So even though they exist...
Now what you're doing, everyone can see. I'm not being funny, but what he's doing... Okay, sorry.
What am I doing? Yeah, tell me.
You're just making a case for the Trinity.
I'm not making a case. I promise you I'm not... Listen to me, I promise you. I promise you I'm not making a case.
That's what your PhD is
Muhammed. Our whole point of this discussion was not about the Trinity. If you want to talk about the Trinity, we can bring...
before.
I know, but I'm saying if you want to talk about the Trinity, we can bring that in. All I'm saying to you is that I think you need to...
Joshua.
One second, can I just say my point?
You think, go ahead.
I think your argument is flawed.
Because you don't believe in the Trinity?
No. I'm saying your argument doesn't lead to the existence of one necessary
The reason why you don't want it to, I understand.
Doesn't want it to.
No. The reason I appreciate why you don't want it to.
Yes.
The reason why you don't want it to is because you realize if I say there are three independent things, it's a contradiction. Yeah, everyone can see that. Even a small child can see that that's a contradiction.
The Trinity doesn't. Number one, you don't know the Trinity then. The Trinity doesn't claim that three independent things.
Do you want to be straightforward about this? We've had this discussion once or twice before, and I've said the same point to him before, right? Just as a context. I said to you, bro, that the reason why there's one of the main logical reasons the Trinity can't be true is because you can't have, and I made the point of omnipotence, you can't have three almighties. But then I would also say, attached to that, and by the way, can I be straightforward with you guys? I want to be straightforward with you guys. All of those individuals like Plantinga and Swinburne and...
It's called Swinburne.
Swinburne. It's not what it's called, it's just a pronunciation different. I got the pronunciation.
No, when you say swine, it sounds a little weird. Okay.
Swinburne, and what do you call Plantinga, and what do you call it? William Lane Craig. Those individuals, here's the problem with them, Steve, what's his name? John, and Michael. The problem is, Christians use the cosmological argument, yeah? And they use it unashamedly, they take it from the Islamic world, even though they attack Islam's concept of God. They take the cosmological, they call it the Kalam cosmological argument. In fact, my book, similar name, right, taken from William Lane Craig. He wrote a book in 1979 called Kalam Cosmological Argument, as if there's one. There's not one. That's why I wrote a book called Kalam Cosmological Arguments.
But Muhammed, Plantinga never defended a cosmological argument. He's never defended it. So he's defending an ontological argument. Swinburne doesn't. He doesn't. No. I'm telling you, my PhD literally is on his work. Yeah, so I'm saying.
I've seen him on YouTube.
Yeah, I've met him. I've gone to his house. So I'm saying, literally, Swinburne does not. He does not agree with Craig about the Kalam argument. He thinks the Kalam argument does not work.
But what he
doesn't use that.
No, but he uses a form of the contingency argument.
No, that he sources sorted from Leibniz. It's sorted from Leibniz.
Can I explain something to you?
Yes.
You guys in the Western Ivory Towers, right? Yes. You don't understand where Leibniz got his stuff from. You don't understand. You don't know. And by the way, I'm going to put all of the Christians to shame now because you've been trying to poison the well for the last 20 minutes.
Why are you saying terms like poison the well?
poison.
Why?
Let me explain.
Is that necessary?
No, okay.
Because someone disagrees with you about your argument, you're poisoning the well.
Because let me tell you why. Everyone's sorry. I was talking to an atheist, and the guy wasn't talking to me. Like, at least know that there's a common.
No, but you understand. Wait, no, but one second. But just to clarify this point, so you made an accusation against me. Okay.
No.
Wait, no. One second. Are we seekers of truth? Are we seekers? Yes. Are we discussing about if something's true or false?
Yes.
Okay. So it doesn't matter if I'm an atheist, you're a theist, and this person is a theist as well. If we're talking about an argument and I disagree with your point, because I think it's false, what's wrong with that?
No problem.
Doesn't mean you're poisoning the well. Right? It doesn't make sense.
Because before I say something, poisoning the well, the logical fallacy is before someone before someone says something, you're preempting what they're going to say, and you're telling them what they're going to say.
I think you did that.
Oh, maybe I did that. I'm bad as well. I'm a bad man as well. We're both bad. Let's repent to God.
I was trying to make an argument about independent things, and you said I don't want to go down that road.
No, let's go
making
back.
the assumption.
The point I wanted to make, Josh, was that when you're talking about Leibniz was very, very aware of the Asharite tradition, and he was very, very aware of Avicenna. Now, if I were to ask you, what books have you read from Avicenna?
I haven't read anything.
That's the problem. Why
is that a problem?
It's a big problem.
Tell me why it's a big problem.
It's an issue, bro.
Tell me why it's an issue.
You're claiming to be.
Yes.
And you want to be a scholar of the philosophy of religion.
Yes.
And you don't even know of the biggest name in all of medieval.
You just say I don't know. I know of him. I just haven't
read any of his works.
Okay.
No, okay. Here's the problem.
Okay.
Stop.
Have you read Plantinga's work?
Yes, I have.
Okay. Tell me Plantinga's work.
Let me just speak.
So tell me about Plantinga.
I will in a second. But let me just
tell me. No, I want to know.
He's a contemporary. He's
but
not relevant to me.
He's not relevant.
Yeah, he's a contemporary.
Sorry.
Just let me explain.
Plantinga is the leading philosopher of religion. Doesn't matter.
Bro, he's
the leading. He just won a Templeton Prize 2 years ago.
Yes, I don't care.
That's like a Nobel Prize.
Bro,
in this field, it's a Nobel Prize. So someone who's...
Sorry.
sorry.
Do you know what Aquinas is?
Sorry? Of course I know what Aquinas is.
Let me explain something to you. Can I explain something to you?
Just because someone's 1,000 years ago, they must be great, but they're living now, they're rubbish.
Spend a second to listen. You're just talking.
The argument doesn't work. No, I'm just saying, number one, don't just discard someone because they are contemporary. Someone could be contemporary. No, but you are. You could discard them.
Josh,
it is an appeal to authority as well.
Thank you very much. What I'm saying to you is, when you talk about Leibniz, his contingency argument, I can prove to you, bro, if you really wanted me to do that with manuscripts, primary source materials, I can prove to you that Leibniz has taken his ideas from Asherites.
But I don't care. What's that to do with anything? Like, if he took it from, okay, great. But Muhammed, if he took it from him, I have no problem with that.
Got a problem.
I'm not arguing against that. It's not about the history of philosophy. I'm not arguing with that.
Josh, you're not letting me speak, bro.
Okay.
Do you know what? He's being quite unruly here today.
Unruly, okay. Sorry about that. I apologise if I'm unruly.
I'm saying to you, bro.
I'm just saying I feel it's irrelevant where we've gone.
Okay,
because we were talking about independance.
Can you let me speak?
And your argument.
Can you let me speak?
Yeah, okay.
Can you let me speak?
Yeah, please speak.
Josh, what I'm saying to you is, honestly, have patience. What I'm saying to you is simple. That the arguments in the form that I'm presenting them is something which is new to you. Simple as that, right? Why is it new to you? Because you and all of the other Christian scholars, most of them, not all of them, definitely not William Lane Craig, but a lot of them, they assume or read through secondary sources what the Islamic Golden Age philosophers have said, and then they make arguments, counter-arguments to that. All of you have not read primary sources on that. All of you don't know what you're talking about when it comes to that. So excuse me, hold on.
Swinburne is emeritus professor at Oxford,
He doesn't know Arabic.
And he's just saying, sorry, he just discarded.
Swinburne does not know.
He had a chair at Oxford, sorry. He had a chair at Oxford.
Are you listening?
Or he just doesn't even know his stuff.
Swinburne, no, listen to me.
Come on, man.
Well, why can't
We're Speaker's Corner people. I would even respect Swinburne.
No, I haven't. I'm saying to you, when you're saying the ontological argument or the contingency argument, from your Western perspective, what you're referring to you're referring to very specific Western scholars. Anselm of Canterbury, Leibniz, whoever you mentioned, right? No problem. What I'm saying is that form of the argument, I have never presented it, never defended it, and I don't even agree with it.
Okay.
All right, so...
Do you know, Mohammed? Okay, fine. Let's just get back on track. Okay, no problem. No problem.
No, this is an important thing for you.
If I've taken someone, I apologise. Let's just get back on track.
This is an important thing for you, bro, because why is this important? Because when I say this is an ontological argument, or this X is I'm talking about something we're not on the same wavelength, bro. We're talking about two different things. So here, if you really want to be humble to a tradition, like for example, if I have no understanding of Hellenistic philosophy, I'd go to someone who's a specialist in that, and I'd go and see. So I'm telling you, bro, straightforwardly, all of the names that you mentioned, all those Christian scholars, all of them have with the exception possibly of William Lane Craig, have a very, and I would even include him, a superficial understanding of Islamic, of the Islamic tradition when it comes to the.
I'm saying, just 1 second. The argument that you
access the books.
But Muhammad, the argument. All I said was the argument you presented is exactly the same argument that literally has.
I think we should just.
Anyway, we can have this discussion.
Yeah. So he made a very. Do we have free will? Do we have free will? Do we have free will?
Yeah, we do. But
he made a very important point. So we are not necessary. We are contingent. So there's a cause.
Thank you anyway.
So it's as a result of cause and effect. So he made a good point about everything being determined by necessary, which leads like a domino. So when you kick up the first one, everything goes. So do we have free will?
Yeah, let me explain. So we believe in compatibilism, right?
Okay. Compatibilism.
Yeah, so atheists, Muslims, Jews and Christians have struggled with the question. Everyone has struggled with the question, okay? And this is not a Muslim specific issue. Because the question is, if everything is determined, how is there free will?
Or even if everything's contingent, there's no free will.
No, that's different.
No, everything's contingent.
That's another question.
The same.
It's not the same. Contingency, independent.
No.
I get your point. They're two different questions. What I'm saying to you is simple. The question that people ask is that if everything is written or if everything is determined, then how comes we have the choice to do whatever we want? Yeah? Now that question is not a question that Muslims only ask. Christians ask the same question. Jews ask the same question. And by the way, atheists ask the same question as well. Now obviously they don't say that everything is written. But in philosophy you have two schools of thought. Right. In philosophy you have 2 or 3 schools of thought, main schools of thought. One of them is called hard determinism. So hard determinism is you believe that everything is you have no choice in the matter basically, right? Everything is determined for you. Now,
not determined for you is that it is contingent on the past. So it's not like necessarily that there's a final design. It's just that everything comes from the past.
Yes. So you have no choice in the matter.
Yeah.
Right. So in things like there's no choice. There is no free will.
Yeah.
On the other hand, you have libertarians. Now, obviously, it's not a philosophical, political philosophy thing. Libertarians in this context are people who believe that we have free will and there is no determinism, right? In the middle, you have a group of people called compatibilists who affirm, and this is in philosophy, right? Atheists believe in this. Yeah, that affirm the first person experience of having
the illusion of free will and living by it.
You have free will as an experience, but that's only in the context of determinism, right? Yeah. So it's kind of like a mix of both, and lots of scholars have different.
But it's the illusion.
Now, in Islam, we are compatibilists in that sense, in our own way. So in other words, we say that we do have free will. There's a beautiful poem, I think it's from Causality. He says, I'm going to say in Arabic and then translate. ومن عجائب الجبار أن يجبر العباد بالاختيار. And from the wonders of the compeller, and the compeller here is God, yeah? Okay. That he compels the creation to be free-willed. One more time.
Oh, no, I've got it.
Got it? No, just for the people. ومن عجائب الجبار أن يجبر العباد بالاختيار. And from the wonders of the compeller is that he compels the creation into free will, right? So into choice. Now the point is, there is no contradiction, according to us, with the fact that God is the determiner of things, but He allows certain segment of His creation, human beings and jinn and so on, to have their own choice, because that's all predicated or in the context of His determining it. That's why the Quran says, وَمَا تَشَاءُونَ إِلَّا أَن يَشَاءَ اللَّهُ. That you will not have any will except that God has the will first. In other words, God is the ultimate willer. So if it wasn't for, that's why we say inshallah. If you ever meet a Muslim, you say, okay, inshallah, I'll go tomorrow. So if God willing, right? Because everything is determined by God. Now, I would ask the atheist the question, that because a determinist atheist believes in determinism. Like I had a discussion with some atheist young guy, and he said that he believes in determinism. But we're saying, who's the determinist? Right? Because if you believe in determinism, what determined the thing? Who or what?
Well, it goes back to contingency.
Right. So we say that's the necessary.
Yeah. But that doesn't quite argue the issue around the fact that Muhammad could only have done what he did because it was written in the Quran or recited.
No. So you're asking a question of now determinism versus free will.
Well, it's combined.
So that's a question. I don't know why you're making that Muslim specific. That's a question. That
No. But I know it's a broader.
Right. So I'm just giving you my position on it.
No, but I'm arguing the fact that
it's different when you kind of. It's different when you have predestination as well.
No. That's the thing. As an atheists have predestination as well. They have determinism. It's the equivalent. No, it's the equivalent.
It's not necessarily predestination.
Well, let me be clear. I've just said this before you came. Right. Well, let me say it again. If you go online now and write hard determinism, right, as a philosophical school of thought, which is outside of any theology, you can be an atheist and believe in it. Everything literally is determined. You believe everything is determined. In other words, you don't have any free will, right? That's the belief. Right, so
that means it can mean something different in physics, though, like determinism.
No, but this is a view atheists hold. Okay? It's a very common view.
I mean, I'm less interested in what atheist philosophers have to say about the universe, as I am about what physicists say about the universe.
Well, that's up to you, bro. Because that's up to you. There are a lot of physicists that are hard determinists as well.
So the problem with that is that, like, if you look at quantum mechanics and like particles don't behave in a deterministic way. Like, for example, there's Bell's inequalities.
No, they would disagree. Determinists would disagree.
But what evidence do they have for that?
They'll say that everything follows a causal chain, and that causal chain is uninterrupted, and that there is an inevitability in things that will come in the future. Because of the events that came in the past, and therefore there's a determinism.
But also from a very personal.
Right, so that's what an atheist is. Look, bro, you're not arguing against me. I'm not a determinist. I'm a compatibilist. So go and have an argument with a determinist.
From that deterministic basis, even on a personal basis, regarding to the illusion of free will, is that you can't decide which thought emerges from your mind, and you can't decide which thought you believe. So you are being ruled by a set of thoughts that emerge from your mind and by a set of contingent beliefs that are really out of your control, and it's the illusion of free choice.
Right, so you're going to get the illusion of free choice. We would say that the necessary existence or the determiner, if you like, because one of God's attributes is that he determines things. Yeah? He determines things. Right, so God is the owner of determination, right? الذي قدر فهدى. He's the one who literally, and this is not, by the way, determinism. But the point is, he proportioned things and then he allowed things to go. Here, قدر means proportion, not determined. Yeah, but القضاء والقضاء, which is something different in Arabic, which means that the idea of determination is something which belongs to God, right? So he does that. From our perspective, we believe in that. We believe that God is in control of everything. However, we also believe that since he's in control of everything and he determines everything, he can also determine for human beings that they have free choice.
Yes, but even in this moment, you can't even kind of prove that you have free choice. No, even though that's determined by...
Right, it's self-evident, right? So as an experience, as first person,
I would challenge that, but yeah.
No, do you not feel it? Do you feel like you're in control of your life? You might feel like, okay, I want to have cherry rather than chocolate, right? You don't feel like that?
No, that's not my choice, is it? It's my condition.
I appreciate it. No, that's a philosophical answer. I'm telling you, I'm talking to you from an intuitive perspective. Yeah, don't say illusion.
I know, it's illusion.
You feel as if, from a first person perspective, right now, that you can leave this conversation and go if you wanted to, right?
That's not the issue that's not how you would define free will or free choice at all.
No, I'm not saying that's how you define it, but I'm just saying that
it's common, isn't it, that people feel they have free choice? So
no problem.
So that's the argument.
Yeah, so from our perspective, we actually make sense of compatibilism through the following. We say that since it doesn't contradict any of God's attributes. Now, the question is, can God allow for a situation where he's determining everything, but allowing, so in other words, it's the coexistence, let me put it this way, is the coexistence of godly determinism and human free will against any of God's attributes?
I couldn't answer.
Right.
Isn't it
So
like
if
a
the answer
square
is no,
circle?
if it's
Beyond our
against,
comprehension.
pardon?
It's beyond our comprehension.
Yeah, it's beyond our comprehension. We don't know how it works, but
You've got a framework that you're trying to explain to me, and that, I want to hear it.
No, but everyone is saying that. Atheists are saying this. This is something that no one knows how it works. That's the reality. No one knows how it works. Atheists, Christians, Muslims, Jews, everyone. So there's no solution anywhere. You're always going to have the issue of, okay, this is determinism and this is free will. Either it comes together or it doesn't. So here's the thing. This is, first of all, we have to really separate this. This is, make this bold. This is not a Muslim particular issue. No, just clear. You're asking me from my perspective, from a theological perspective, we believe in compatibilism. And we have a reason for believing.
So it's like 50% free will and 50% determinism.
No, it's 100% determinism. 100%. No. Doesn't work like that.
Tell us.
It doesn't work like that. God determined everything.
Everything?
Yes.
Every thought, every choice?
Everything.
Okay.
It's determined by God.
Yes. And in that, he allows human beings to be free in their choice. Now, how? The question is how. No one knows how.
No one knows
how.
Okay.
But hold on. Atheists don't know how.
Okay.
I would say,
no, that's fine.
The howness is not defined.
But I think there is a way of, so if that were true, if it was absolutely true that somehow, there is a slightly tricky argument, that everything is determined, but also that Allah says, you are also determined to have free will. Michael, you can have free will.
Yes.
Everything else. But everything else is determined, but you can be free. That's tough, right, in itself. And also, if you could prove to me that you genuinely have free will, then that would be part of the argument. But I think, as you know from a philosophical point of view, you can't actually prove it.
No, you can't.
You can't
prove you can't. You can only do it through intuition. There's only one way.
And I think that's pretty poor.
Epistemologically, it's not pure, because that's how we find out how we exist. As people, it's not poor. As individuals, I know of my own existence, not through verificationism, falsificationism, or through scientific experimentation. I know I exist because I feel that I exist. In the same exact way as I feel that I exist, I feel like I have a choice of having a conversation with you or walking away. That's experiential. You can't negate that. You can't just say, okay, well, because if you negate that, if you say that, well, actually, I'm going to negate the fact that you feel in that way. Hold on. Then you can also negate the fact that I say that
I think
therefore I am.
I know, but that's not quite the point that I'm saying. So if you could demonstrate to me that you can choose what you believe, then that would demonstrate.
I'm not saying I can't
Wait.
I'm not saying I can't
But if you could, then I would be impressed.
No, I'm not.
That you could just decide what you believe. Free will. Using your God-given free will.
Yes.
That you could decide what you believe and what you don't.
That's a legitimate interrogation. What you're saying is, you can't demonstrate that free will exists in the real world.
Not even right now,
Yeah, you're right. You cannot.
Why is that?
You cannot demonstrate on a third-person level that free will exists. You can only do so on a first person.
I'm not talking about theoretically. I'm talking about empirically.
I agree with you. Yeah. Empirically, but you can't even demonstrate. Empirically, there's lots of things you can't demonstrate, right? In mathematics being one. But what I'm saying is that on the level of demonstration, on a third-person level, it's undemonstratable.
Can I just ask you a question?
Right, so it's first person. What I would say is that there's no reason for us to give third person verificationism, falsificationism, any more or less values than first person falsification. Because you know why? Or expression. Because you know why? Actually, you could argue that the basis of all other philosophical investigation starts with first person inquiry. And that's the understanding that we exist. Now that comes by the way, we prove that we exist through first-person discovery. We know that we exist through first-person understanding. We don't know that we exist from third-person demonstration. So in the same way as we don't do that through third-person demonstration, what I'm saying is that free will is something you cannot negate. It's unnegatable, but it's also unfalsifiable. So it's unscientific. So because it's unscientific, you can't deal with it. It's metaphysical, and because it's metaphysical, we say that you cannot be guided on it, and that's why we follow revelation on the matter. So okay, there's 3 schools of thought: the school of thought of hard determinism, compatibilism, and what do you call it, libertarianism. We take how do we differentiate? Because we can't prove anything.
Okay, so
how do we know
you accept
that
it's
compatibilism is true?
Impossible to know, so you take the scriptural kind of understanding.
Yeah, and that scriptural understanding doesn't negate the fundamentals, attributes of God, being omnipotent. In fact, here's the thing: it's impossible to have an omnipotent God or an all-powerful God at all times and all places unless He's in control of everything and determines everything. It's impossible. You can't say that you believe in a God that is all-powerful unless He's in determination of everything. He determines everything. So in other words,
He could decide to say, I'm not going to determine anything within this reality.
If He decides that, then He ceases to be God.
Ah, well, that's another issue. But
He does. He stops being God.
Can I just ask you?
Because if God decides to be a man, then He doesn't become God anymore.
So going back to the personal, and I just wanted to just check in that.
Do you get the point?
Yeah. But just to check in that I think you're going to agree, but I just want to double check, is that you don't have choice about what you believe. Is that true?
No, I believe I have choice, but that choice was ceded to me by the determiner.
Okay.
Right?
So you have choice given to you by Allah.
Yes.
Great.
Well, who's the ultimate determiner?
Sure.
Yeah.
So now what I'd like you to demonstrate is you changing your belief back and forward from one belief to the opposite about anything. So one of the beliefs that I think Hamza says about, you believe your father is your father, yeah? You don't know your father is your father. So do you believe your father is your father?
Yeah.
Okay, now just show me that you can change that belief just for 2 seconds that your father isn't your father. And if you can do that to me, then you've proven to me.
Let's do it with your father.
No.
That's a valid question.
What's the question?
Right, okay. So you believe that your father is your father?
With the evidence that we have.
No, it's your belief. It doesn't matter about him. So
no, it does matter about him.
No.
I only know that because he was in the household and he looks like him. He's got the same feet as well.
Well, I mean, let's not get diverted because it is a serious question. You believe that your father is your father, and you have told me that you have God-given free choice, and you have the choice to believe that your father isn't your father. So I'd like you, even for 2 seconds, to believe that your father isn't your father.
Let's do that with your father, if that's all right.
No, you know, what are we talking about, my father? I'm talking about
Can
you
we say someone else's father? Someone else's father. I don't want
Why? Okay, let's do a different subject. Where were you born?
London,
Okay, so can you believe for 2 seconds that you were born in Edinburgh?
Yeah.
Go on then.
Okay. Oh, but you mean believe actually?
Yeah, actually believe, yeah. Actually believe.
You have to give me some drugs first.
No, come on. You're telling me don't use your God-given choice there.
Right.
You're going to choose to believe that you're in a...
You can't go against the...
No. You choose that you believe...
Yeah,
okay. So
I get what your point.
Please use your God-given choice. Your God-given choice. Don't let Allah down.
I'll tell you what
that
happens.
You can believe, for 2 seconds, that you were born in Edinburgh.
It happens sometimes, bro. Like,
no. I'm not talking about happening. I'm talking about now, doing it now.
I can't do that.
You can't do it. Why can't you do that?
Because of the evidence.
Right, so the only way that our beliefs change is based on a set of evidence that influences our beliefs.
Yes.
We don't have a choice about that. We can't choose what we believe. And you get a set
that's
of
the argument of
thoughts.
determinism.
Yeah, of course. So, but you're telling me, I agree that's the argument of determinism, but you're telling me that you have got a God-given free choice. So therefore, you should be able to say, yes, I totally believe I was born in Edinburgh. You don't know you were born in London.
No. On certain issues, you're not going to change your belief.
No, anything. You cannot move your belief.
Okay, how about this?
Anything.
No, that's a good argument. That's a very good argument. I agree with that. That's what you're saying is that determinism can be proven through the fact that environmental factors determine, if you like, how you're going to conceive certain propositions.
Well, that's true, but
that's
the opposite. And the opposite is that you can't demonstrate the opposite.
No problem, but within those parameters, I go to a shop, that shop there.
Yeah.
All right. There's 2 or 3 options I have. I can get what do you call it, a vanilla or strawberry or lemon. Yeah. These are 3 options I can have. What I'm saying is, now my choice is going to be limited to those three things. So either
but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about your beliefs.
Well, even
so
that, you could argue that even for example, if I choose lemon because I like citric things, yeah? If I choose lemon, then that choice is predicated on my desire, which I had no control over.
Sure. That's a deterministic argument.
No problem.
That's fine.
Yeah, that's fine. That's very good. But then you have, here's the only thing that we have that's very good for determinism. The only thing on a philosophical level that we have to say that, okay, that's all well and good, but there's something here we have to look at, is the experiential nature from a first-person perspective.
But that's where I went back to my point, where you cannot demonstrate even the experiential nature.
No, you can't demonstrate
You can't demonstrate that you
agree with that.
Well,
no, that's fine.
Yeah, that's pretty
fine.
difficult.
But what I said to you was that it's first person, and there's no reason to devalue it because it's first person. It's undemonstrable.
But I'm talking about your first person belief.
No. It's undemonstrated. You're right. You can't demonstrate on third person.
No. For you to change your belief.
How I feel. For example, if I feel good, happy, sad, whatever, that's how I feel, right? That's first person.
Can you choose to feel happy when you're sad?
Sometimes.
Sometimes. No, you can't choose. Yeah.
Yeah, it's illusory. You could argue that from that angle, it's all predicated on a set of past things, right? I get the argument.
And evidence, right? And experience.
That experience that you have, where you're choosing lemon over orange or orange over strawberry, cannot be negated.
No, I know, but I don't think this is a good focus for that argument.
On that moment, where I'm choosing lemon over strawberries, for example.
Yeah.
Now, I am choosing lemon over strawberries. Yeah, I am choosing that. I'm choosing lemon over strawberry.
You know.
I'm choosing it, right? I feel like I'm choosing it.
You feel like you choose.
Right, so the irrefutability of this is because it's predicated on the unfalsifiability of it. Do you understand that?
Well, explain it in specifics.
Right, so if something is unfalsifiable from a scientific perspective, yeah, so if I say, for example, how I feel, that's unfalsifiable. It's not falsifiable.
But you see, this is the thing, is that when you go into specific choices between A and B, right, and if you're a parent, you say you want, an orange or an apple, and it's like, oh yes, I'll have one, you feel like you've got to. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about in your mind, really. And,
yes, exactly.
And we've agreed with that, but I don't want to get away from that, because every day you wake up and you have a thought, and you might have another thought, and another thought, and only one of those thoughts you believe, but you haven't got choice over which one you believe.
I totally agree, to some extent.
And therefore, you are determined that I will get up and go
agree with that, bro.
to X, Y, and Z.
I'm not a libertarian, bro. So if I was a libertarian, these arguments would be great. What my position is that everything is determined. However, within that framework...
Your position is that you've got free choice given to you by Allah.
Let me explain. My position is everything is determined by Allah. Yeah, He's the determiner. However, within that context, and this goes into compatibilism of some sorts, within that context, that compeller has compelled us, has determined for us, because here's the thing, when you have a determiner, he has determined for us to be free willed. Since you have now this agency of determination, that agency of determination can compel you, can determine for you to have free will. And we're saying that's not negatory of any of the attributes of God. So compatibilism on this framework is not contradictory. It's not a contradiction. However, and that's why it's a legitimate school of thought, not just in Islam, but in secular philosophy. It's not something which anyone has been able to disprove. And there's things written on it, papers, if you want to go and check it. Forget about Islam, this is not an Islamic discussion. Right. So since this is something that is in Judaism and Islam and Christianity and atheism, I'm just giving you my opinion.
But not in Hinduism.
I don't know what Hinduism is.
Well, it's not. But that's the thing. It's not all. It's particularly Judeo Christianity and Islam, the Abrahamic religions that particularly focus on free will in a way. And actually, that free will, even though obviously we talked a bit about it, also creates the guilt or the issue, the relationship.
That free will is predicated. Remember the poem.
I understood your argument. I agree. But the thing is, and I think I don't. We have to add that. But I know unfalsifiable. But even given that free will, and I come back to the point. I know I'm being repetitive. Is even given that free will, we still can't even demonstrate that we've got it.
I agree with that. No, that's we can't demonstrate. We can't demonstrate that we exist.
I know, but I mean...
No, but that's not... I know,
it's very important. No, for you to demonstrate existence is one thing, but to demonstrate that you can change your belief at will is another thing.
No, you're right. Demonstration, but here's the fallacy. Demonstration doesn't... Just because you can't demonstrate something, it doesn't mean it's wrong.
Well, no, in this example, just because you can't demonstrate it doesn't mean you don't have free will. That's what you're saying.
Yes.
Well,
you'd have to agree with that.
I don't agree with that.
Yeah, and also about the necessary argument. You haven't actually answered my question. Like this theologians claim like everything is contingent on this prime cause, prime mover, first cause, or mover, actualizer. But that's just all we know about it. That we don't know if it is conscious, if it is personal, if it wants us to report.
Alright, cool. That's a wrap for a minute. I'm gonna go and find something to film and then come back.